Sean Ingalls.
That's good to see you. Hi, Jeff Stauffer. Yeah. So tell me, John, how it's so far this time in your opinion? Because yes, agreed. So did speak to John. One more hand for Hanbing Jia and Sebastian Volchev. Thank you so much for being with us today. They're going to be playing one more time during our break. So, now is the time during the event that I have a sliver, and I mean a sliver of time, to talk about the Elville Center for the Creative Arts, which is our firm's charitable organization that we founded in 2014 by Steve Elville, our managing principal and lead attorney. I'm privileged to be the executive director of the charity. We work to make a musical difference in the lives of children each day. We fund educational initiatives. We refurbish donated instruments, which we depend on donors to receive. I want to recognize some donors that are in the audience right now very briefly. Wait a minute. There we go. Andy and Lynn Kachis, Andrea Pesimer, Dr. Mark Hurlson, Steve Arasumi, Robert and Ann Slattery, Barbara Scott Johnson, Margaret Pipp, Roseanne Schuler, John and Marcia Barnes, Ted and Bridget Wesley, Wayne Zussman, Gerard and Marla Lynch. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. And over the years, we've had hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of donors, but we depend on people like these people that are here today to do what we do every day. And one of the schools that we work with is Mr. Timothy Jessalonis, band and strings teacher at Southgate Elementary School. This is a picture of me. I look really handsome in that picture. I always look so awkward in those pictures. During my visit this spring, we delivered so many instruments and other needed supplies for his program. It's so great to always visit his school. He has such a great personality, and his school and their staff are always so welcoming and inviting. And just before I move on, here's some information about how to donate to the Elville Center by contributing to our raffle over there. We also accept Venmo, checks, IRA distributions, stock gifts, many different ways. Most all donations are tax deductible. You can always reach out to me at jeff@elvillcenter.org, or there's my direct number at the office, visiting our website as well. One thing I want to say about the charity, this is what Tim said after our most recent donation to his school. Southgate appreciates the Elville Center's donation so much. Earlier this year, we had many students who were unable to access the music program at all, and some that were put on to students they weren't in love with playing. The donations from Elville have inspired many of our students to learn great practice habits which transfer to every part of their lives. We have a record number of rising 5th grade students going in middle school as musicians this year. Starting 6th grade in music, these students have a built-in group of friends. We have great footing to begin with another, I'm getting ahead of myself here, to begin with another record year in Southgate Band and Strings, thanks to the Elville Center. Thank you again. So it's not just making a musical difference in the lives of children, it's making just an overall difference in their lives. We know that music helps with better learning, developing better habits, and so, you know, a donation to the Elville Center or any music organization just helps students become more well-rounded as they grow into young adults and into their adulthood. So, you know, what we do is so important, and your support is so needed. So, what I want to talk a little bit now, about right now, as the lights dim, that wasn't done on purpose, is our most important venture, which is the Annapolis Symphony Academy and the Orion Youth Orchestra. I want to bring up Dr. Netanel Dreblatt, who is the concert master of the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra and the founder and director of the Annapolis Symphony Academy. Natty, do you want to come on up?
Thank you, Jeff. It's very bright. Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Natty is, it's a privilege to be sharing the stage with Natty, actually. He is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met in my life, if I do say so. He really is. So we've had a great relationship with the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra. We've been a major sponsor of the orchestra at the Elville Center for a few years, and our funds that we provide the orchestra are earmarked to the Academy and its students. And the Academy's had some tremendous growth over the last few years, thanks to sponsors and thanks to the work of Natty here. So please share with us just a little bit about what's going on with the Academy and the Orion Youth Orchestra.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, good morning, everyone. It's so great to see you. And thank you again, Jeff. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody who donated instruments and funds to help us do what we do. It's been a wild ride for the last 6 years. This whole operation has been going on for only 6 years. We started with 21 kids, 2018. It's 120 kids now. And all throughout, when we got started, I think, Sebastian, you were one of our first students too. And it was mainly strings. They're woodwinds, they're brass instruments, mainly also because we got a lot of donation of the instruments from the Elville Foundation, so we were able to put it in kids' hands. We have 4-year-olds playing little percussion instruments. We start them at 4. So you saw the very important statement that the team, the school teachers from Southgate made. They start in our county at 3rd grade, having orchestra lessons in school. We're gonna get them there sooner. We're doing like the football recruitment thing now. We find them when they're 4 years old, and we grab them, and we give them instruments, and then when they graduate from that, we give them private teachers, just like Sebastian has, and Mr. Hanbing here is one of our private teachers at the Academy. All of our teachers are professional symphony musicians. The name of the project comes from the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra, which is our main parent organization. And so I used to teach there, Hanbing teach there, all of our musicians teach in the project. One of the main things that we are very proud of in 6 short years, and that's many thanks also to you guys, is we have given about $275,000 in scholarships to kids who could not afford music lessons. That's, for a small orchestra, a lot of money. And it's primarily and actually only because of generous people and foundations that do that and help us achieve our goal. One of our other missions that you can kind of almost see in that picture over there, but you will see mostly in the picture of the little kids playing, is a diversity mission. We find that if you go to a concert hall, you will, and now don't take it personally, see a lot of crowds that look like this. Okay? And so we love you. Please come to the concert. But still, one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that the orchestra tomorrow reflects the community that it actually plays in. And for us to do that, we need to reach out into communities that were not as exposed to classical music, or maybe it wasn't as accessible for them, or maybe a financial issue was a barrier between the student and the project. So diversity is one of our biggest models, and the one thing that makes our program unique in the entire country is that we decided to split it right in the middle. Because if I took a bunch of kids that came from a background that is underserved, that's great. But all I've done is I segregated them again into a program where the interaction is not there. And once they're done and they go take a music job, the interaction there with people that think and look and behave differently maybe is a little difficult, and it can hinder what they're doing. So our model puts the split right in the middle. 50% of the kids come from underserved backgrounds, 50% of the kids come from any other background that you find in the American orchestra, we'll call it. And they learn to live and play and understand each other and talk. And that's one of the most important missions that we can ever do, is to give them the future that they can take outside of the music and start learning about each other's and their backgrounds and their history and learning about music together. So that's another very important thing that we do. And I can talk here until we're all blue in the face, because it takes a lot of time to explain something like this. But bottom line is, we have a concert with this fine orchestra that Sebastian is playing with. January 20th, not too far from here. It's the Care Center for the Performing Arts, the Annapolis Christian School in Severn. I know Jeff has information, and I know he'll sell some stuff, or send you some stuff later about the tickets. Please do join. The one thing that, on top of a financial support, that those kids like the most is seeing full rooms like this, because that's the best support we can give them. So if you are free on that day and you can attend at 7:30, please join us. We'd love to see you there. All right. Thank you.
Nadi, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for a great mission and all you do for music education and music as a whole. So, yeah, there's the information about the concerts. I will be sending information out after our event about the event in general, along with our slides. And this is a long link to remember. If you do remember it, you're remarkable. But I will send out the live link for you to go ahead and sign up and get some tickets to the concerts. So encourage you to go. I know that I will be there. So hope to see you there. So, did I go over my time? I didn't. Wow, that's amazing. So, if you haven't donated, I encourage you to do so. Please support us so we can further support organizations like the Annapolis Symphony Academy. And any questions, always reach out to me. I'm very happy to make time to talk about the charity at any time. So, with all that said, we're going to turn our attention to Elwell & Associates Senior Associate Attorney Shannon Goodwin and our Senior Paralegal Liz Williams-Walsh, and we're going to talk about some door prizes. So, as I always say every year, past performance is not a guarantee of future results. It's all yours.
Good morning again, everybody. Okay. Lisa Betancourt, where are you? Okay, that young lady in the back is going to walk around with a basket. Everybody who registered today is now registered for the door prizes. We're going to do a few each drawing for separate winners. So we're going to start off today with the musical theme. And we have tickets to the Baltimore Classical Guitar Society, to attend a show at Lineman Hall on the UMBC campus And it's going to be the Sharon Isbin-Brower's 85th birthday. Sharon has been a soloist with over 200 orchestras and has performed in the world's finest halls. She is the winner of the Munich ARD, the Madrid and Toronto competitions, Germany's Echo Classic, and performed in Scorsese's Oscar-winning The Departed. So, Lisa, do we have a winner? The tension is so thick. Once I mentioned The Departed, everybody picked up. They said, oh, I know that movie. Thank you, Lisa. And the winner is Diane White. Where is Diane? Oh, Diane, right here in the front. Okay. Diane, I'm going to, congratulations. The prizes will remain up here, and you can all pick them up when you're done. Okay. Thank you, Diane. Okay, so we'll stick that. All right, now we're going to go from music to football. Just one swing to the other. And the lovely Shannon Goodwin will hold up this basket if she can. This is the Baltimore Ravens football fan basket. All right, here we go. Let's go Ravens. That's right, we have team spirit. This basket includes sweet and savory items, crackers, cheese, sausage, pretzels, nuts, dipping mustard, 2 regional beers, and a themed bottle opener and foil chocolates. Lisa. Go Ravens. Do we have any Ravens fans in the house?
Yes.
Dumb question. It'll be a Commanders fan that wins this.
I saw who just did that drawing.
What about
Hi,
our
Ruth.
Jets fans in the house? Thank you. It would be, I'm sorry. Ruth Drucker. Where's Ruth? All right, Ruth. Okay. And we'll do one more music. These are tickets for the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra. Are you Ruth? Oh, you can pick it up when you leave. Okay. This certificate, we're going to give away 4 of these today, entitles the bearer to 2 tickets to the Masterwork Series concerts in 2024 at the Music Center at Strathmore. And if you have never been to the Music Center at Strathmore, you're missing out. It is a beautiful venue. So Lisa, do we have a winner? I'm seeing Frank, Jaser or Jesen Jr. Oh, way in the back. Congratulations, Frank. This is a hand.
Congratulations.
Okay, so that's it for now, Jeff.
Isn't that enough?
Okay.
It is my pleasure to introduce our first presenters this morning. Mr. Stephen Elville, Managing Principal and Lead Attorney of Elville and Associates, and Mr. Evan Kozlow, Principal of the Kozlow Law Firm, LLC. Many of you have worked with Steve before or heard him speak through the years of the hundreds of educational presentations he has offered. And through his leadership efforts and work in elder law, estate planning, special needs planning, and more, Steve and the firm maintain a strong focus on client education, working to bring peace of mind to clients by offering solutions to their needs through counseling, client education, and leading-edge legal technical knowledge. Steve has been named to the Maryland Super Lawyers list for an 8th time, including the past 7 consecutive years in 2023. Steve and Elville and Associates have grown over the past 13 years to be widely recognized as one of the leading firms in Maryland and a resource to, I would say, tens of thousands of people throughout the years, and I think we are just getting started. Evan Koslow, principal of the Koslow Law Firm LLC, has been a trusted partner to Elvin Associates over the years. Anytime one of our clients has a need for a family law attorney, there is never a second thought as to who we would recommend they talk to. Evan, along with every presenter here today, shares Gary's firm and our firm's ideals of client education, collaboration, and compassion with every client every day. And Evan understands that most people at some point in their lives will need a family law attorney. He recognizes that his clients are going through a difficult time, and he provides the compassion, respect, and strong work ethic they deserve. So, gentlemen, thanks for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. And good morning again. All right, well, there's time to have fun and there's time to roll up our sleeves. So here we go. Thank you, Jeff. And I want to say it's a great privilege to present today and also to have my trusted friend and colleague, Evan Koslow, here from Annapolis, who has helped us with so many family law issues as we get into the subject, I should say, of asset protection, which is our main theme today. So I just returned from Orlando for a brief conference. I was down there. We call it the House of the Mouse. And so we were down there. And the one thing I was reminded as I came back from Orlando is, in Florida, they have what? Of course, they have warm weather. They have the villages. And they have lots of things. They have Disney World. But they have what? They have homestead protection. So in Florida, you have a lot of asset protection if you live in Florida. So those of you who have a house in Florida, you know what I'm talking about. What is the homestead protection in Maryland? Virtually zero. So if you didn't know that, you need to be aware of that. So we have very little in the way of asset protection compared to states like Florida here in Maryland. So that's why we're going to go roll up our sleeves here. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to take you through a little bit of a discussion of asset protection. You may be surprised at some of these things. Some of these things you may say, oh, I knew that, right? So that's good. So we're just checking in about asset protection. And then Evan is going to present on the family law aspects of asset protection, which many of you are concerned about. So, of course, this is educational, and let's get started. What is asset protection in 2023? We're going to talk about that. Why asset protection is important. We talked about that just a little bit now. We're going to contextualize asset protection and understanding, in my view, the simplest way to think of it, 4 major elements of asset protection or types of asset protection. Understanding how to build layers of asset protection. Then Evan's going to talk about the family law aspects, okay? So like all planning, right, we need to have a goal, right? Whether it's tax planning, financial planning, asset protection planning, we have to have a goal in mind, right? And we have to be willing to educate ourselves. So we want to have a purpose. Now, many of you say, what is asset protection or creditor protection, okay? Well, it's liability protection, lawsuit protection. Hopefully none of you have been sued, God forbid, but we don't want to ever have to deal with that. Divorce protection, bankruptcy protection, asset protection for spouses, children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. So when we die, we can leave asset protection for others, and we really can accomplish that if that's a goal. We can do this with flexibility in mind. We can design it. You might have a special purpose. You might have a particular thing that you're trying to protect for a loved one, or you have a child with disabilities and so forth. So every one of you is going to have a different thought process about what is asset protection. So can asset protection plans fail? And the answer is absolutely yes. What is the worst state in the nation for asset protection, by the way, just to keep us interested here? California. Somebody knew that right away. California is the worst asset protection state in the country. Maintenance and updating is important. All right. When you have a will-based plan, is your estate potentially subject to the claims of creditors? Yes, and why is that? Because creditors can make claims against an estate, right? But hopefully when we die, we won't have creditors, but it's possible, right? It is possible. Now, when you have a revocable trust, which many of you have, and that is an alternative to a will, right? Are creditors potentially able to make claims against a revocable trust? Yes, we have somebody educated here who said, yes, that's right. And since 2014, the Maryland law said, yeah, you can make a claim against a revocable trust. Now, don't tell anyone this. Have I ever seen a claim against a revocable trust? No. I've never seen a claim. But theoretically, it's possible. So when we pass away, what do we want to do? We usually want to give notice to creditors so that we can foreclose the claims of creditors, and that's just a best practice. But does a revocable trust in and of itself give you asset protection during your life? No. No asset protection, no tax savings. There is a possibility of creditor claims. So many of you have revocable trusts and you know what I'm talking about. So wills versus revocable trusts, we know creditors can make a claim. Now, many of you have alternatives to these devices. Many of you have joint ownership, typical things that all of us do, retirement plan beneficiaries, transfer on death designations. Do these things in and of themselves give us asset protection? No. So there's no asset protection in these particular methods, although in joint ownership between spouses, there is some limited asset protection. All right, so we have to be aware when we're thinking about asset protection, not only what we own during our lives, but how we're passing it to others, and what is our goal at our time of death when it comes to passing assets to others. That means we have to pay attention to what? Titling. We have to be very aware of how our assets are titled and how they will pass at our death. How many of you know someone who passed away, unfortunately, and the assets went in a way that they didn't expect or that the family didn't expect? Has anyone ever seen that? Things kind of go off the rails. Well, with asset protection, we don't want that. Okay, asset protection also has many aspects. We just started talking about the lifetime aspects. Financial powers of attorney, what does that have to do with asset protection? Did you know that a financial power of attorney is arguably the most important of all the estate planning documents, right? Arguably, because it provides flexibility to be able to do things like, what if I'm incapacitated? My agent could do what? Transfer my assets, protect my assets, establish trusts for my assets, do Medicaid planning for my assets. So don't be asleep at the switch, so to speak, and say, oh, well, gosh, I thought asset protection was some big theory. No, it has to do with all the flexibility that you build into your planning. So many of you are aware of this, but just remember, keep your powers of attorney updated. Maryland law just passed new legislation this past spring, and the new Maryland power of attorney just came out, the new Maryland statutory form. For those of you who don't have the new form, don't worry about it. We will make sure that they get updated for you. But those new forms have some asset protection elements. Okay, so financial powers of attorney, just like I mentioned, they can create trusts, fund trust, transfer assets for Medicaid purposes, all kinds of things. Gifting, what happens when the estate tax exemptions sunset in 2026? Many of you who are not now subject to estate tax, you might be subject to estate tax when these amounts or these exemption amounts come down. So financial powers of attorney can be used not only to protect assets in the traditional sense, but also to protect assets against estate tax. So let's talk about asset protection in 4 major elements: basic lifetime asset protection, inheritance tax and estate tax and generation skipping tax protection, long-term care asset protection, which many of you can really resonate with that, and asset protection at death. So many of you have seen this before. Husband and wife, husband, spouses. If you're married in this room, you have a basic form of asset protection, tenants by the entireties. Is Maryland a big tenants by the entireties state? Yes, and so is Delaware. So many things can be titled as tenants by the entireties, even if you have a revocable trust. So we want to be sure we understand that. Life insurance and annuities are protected from creditors if your spouse or child is the beneficiary. Qualified plans and IRAs are protected from creditors, but inherited IRAs are not protected from creditors, so we have to think carefully about that. Irrevocable trusts that we create during life or at death are protected, and domestic trusts like the Delaware Trust, our friends next door in Delaware, or a Nevada Trust, or an Alaska Trust, or a South Dakota Trust. These types of trusts are domestic trusts, and of course the offshore trusts, those are available too, like trusts in the Cayman Islands and places like that. So asset protection could be the conventional notions that we have about bankruptcy protection and divorce protection, but it also could be thought of as, well, gosh, I need to be cognizant of losing assets to taxes. You know, what if these big exemptions, the $12 million exemption that we have now, almost $13 million, and that's going to increase in 2024, and Maryland's exemption of $5 million, what if these exemptions ever come down, exposing our estate to taxes? So one way of looking at asset protection is, I got to protect against estate tax, and just being cognizant of that. We want to know how to use the annual exclusion of $17,000 per year per person, which will be $18,000 next year. When and if the exemption amount comes down in 2026, we estimate the exemption amount to be $6.8 million per person, something in that area. Those of you who are married can also use the portability method, the method of being able to use the exemption amount of your deceased spouse. And also, asset protection has to do with marital control. And we'll laugh about this a little bit, the idea of remarriage and the idea of addressing that in advance. So asset protection has many, many elements. Let's get into long-term care asset protection in the few minutes that we have. So you can preserve assets from the claims of a nursing home by being proactive. You can be, let's say, not proactive and still have the ability to preserve assets from a Medicaid situation. Hopefully you will never need that, and hopefully your spouse will never need that. But there are various techniques proactively, which we call a pre-crisis plan, and then there are also after-the-thought strategies that are crisis types plans. And Medicaid benefits and veterans benefits and all of these things can be done by optimizing, let's say, strategy legally, but also optimizing income tax advantages and so forth, and asset protection strategies within a Medicaid plan. We talked about this just now, just in the interest of time. Pre-crisis planning, the use of Medicaid asset protection trusts. Some people who are not even trying to do Medicaid planning still use a Medicaid asset protection trust because it's a very powerful tool. So if you don't know what that's all about, you should try to find out about that someday, and we'd be happy to do that. For those of you who have spouses that have illnesses, God forbid, there are strategies to be able to protect assets between spouses while both of you are still alive. And then for those of you who, in the back of your mind, worry about a Medicaid spend down of assets, and hopefully most of you will never need to do that because of your good planning, your good financial planning, your good long-term care insurance planning, and all of those things. But if you have to do that, you need to be assured you will not lose your house. You will not lose all of your assets. So you just need to know about these things. As we all get older, asset protection has many elements, including the long-term care aspect. When we die, and I'm not trying to be funny, it's easy to protect assets when we die. It's easy if we think about it in advance because we can plan for trusts when we die for spouses, grandchildren, children, and we can structure those trusts with a lot of flexibility, with a lot of modern techniques, which we call special fiduciaries like trust protectors. All of these things can be built into an asset protection plan. Now, for those of you who would engage in asset protection during life above and beyond the basic asset protection that you already enjoy in things like retirement plans, in things like life insurance and so forth, you can create irrevocable trusts during life. So some of you will do this for spouses, some of you will do this for children with disabilities, some of you will do this for a charitable trust because you have a very strong charitable intent. But these trusts can be designed, and we don't have a lot of time to go into all this. Jeff threatened me and said I have to be done on time. But there's a lot to go over here and a lot to know as we sit in the conference room and really go over what are your goals, what are you trying to accomplish, what are the tools that are available. Jeff and I give a workshop where he's a wonderful moderator where we go over, I'd say, Jeff, 25 different irrevocable trusts that are available to be used today. So if you say, gosh, there was a lot there today, and I really want to dig into that a little bit more, we're happy to send you the video, the webinar on irrevocable trusts that are available in 2023. So the Secure Act is another aspect of asset protection planning. Many of you are aware that your healthy children, your healthy beneficiaries, are going to have to take their retirement plan distributions in 10 years, right? We're aware of this now. And I just listened to nationally known CPA Robert Keebler talking about this, and there's just no way around it. So unless you have a beneficiary that is one of the 5 exceptions to this, we have a 10-year payout, and that means that those of you who have large retirement plans, your children are going to take a huge hit. Okay, so we want to know what we're doing here. We want to utilize life insurance strategies, and we're going to want to use Roth conversion strategies to try to minimize the effect of the Secure Act. So you see, I'm talking about asset protection from all these different aspects. And as I wrap up and turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Evan Koslow, I want to leave this pyramid with you. Now, normally pyramids are associated with negative things, but this is a good pyramid. And this pyramid is talking about how I would, if I were you, think about asset protection. If there's one thing that I would walk away from here today about asset protection, it's to look at this pyramid and say, okay, let's look at the base of the pyramid. We want to have general liability insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance. Do we want minimal coverages? No. We want robust coverages within reason. We want to have liability policies and so forth, umbrella policies. So that's the base. Titling, how are my assets titled? You see, asset protection is built in layers. Do I have these baseline things? Have I reviewed my titling? I'm looking at my retirement plans, my annuities, my life insurance, and I'm looking at my beneficiaries. And I'm making sure that I have asset protection in those plans. And for inherited IRAs, if you want asset protection, we're going to leave the beneficiaries as trusts, corporations, and LLCs. Those are going to give us asset protection, and some states' LLCs provide more than others. Delaware LLCs maybe offer a bit more protection than Maryland LLCs, and these are things to think about. Irrevocable trust, we just talked about that. Irrevocable trust can be designed with spendthrift provisions and trust protectors, and they can be designed dynastically where they will survive down through your bloodline, through your generations to come. And these provide various levels of asset protection. And the domestic asset protection trust, a good example is the Delaware Trust, and that's a big subject in and of itself. So look at this pyramid as we're starting at the base and we're building up, and that will give you a good idea of what I would just call routine or general asset protection. And then there are specific notions of asset protection like long-term care. So hopefully that gives you something to run with as far as your asset protection thoughts. And Evan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me today. So like Steve, I like to educate the individuals that come into my office and let them know the pros and cons of a divorce, if it's inevitable or perhaps not inevitable and could be salvaged in some way, as well as to be able to educate them on how they can protect themselves even before marriage. And that's going to be the focal point, although I am going to be talking a lot about the divorce process itself with or without a prenup. And so if you did not have a prenup, the court is going to look at the assets, not how they're titled, but when they were obtained and how they were obtained. And so if you purchase or obtain an asset during a marriage that's not from an inheritance or a gift, no matter how it's titled, that is considered marital if you don't have a prenup. Now, with a prenup, you guys have a blank canvas and can do whatever you want to do to protect your assets, as well as any divisions of finances such as alimony. It would not be able to discuss anything relating to children that you may have at the time or during the marriage. So the focus of Maryland is that we're not necessarily a 50-50 state when it comes to division of assets without a prenuptial agreement. What that means is that anybody a spouse could potentially get 60% of the marital assets. They could get 40% of the marital assets. I will say, though, about 90 to 95% of the time, it is a 50-50 split. There's got to be extreme circumstances, such as one person has a lot of debt in their name that was contributed towards the marriage, or a spouse has a lot of non-marital assets and inheritance or money that they came into that they were able to protect. It's very easy to determine marital assets when they are obtained during the marriage, not from an inheritance or gift. The issue is if you come in to a marriage, let's say with a house, and there's still a mortgage on that house, it is possible and likely that without a prenuptial agreement, you're going to have to give a portion of that asset as marital. There are certain ways that you could protect that even without a prenuptial agreement. For example, if you know and you have documentation to support how much that equity was in, let's say, a house at the time of the marriage, that portion gets to stay non-marital. So if you were to divorce and the house at the time of the marriage was, let's say, had an equity of $100,000, and then at the time of the divorce, there was equity of $200,000, $100,000 of that would be non-marital, and only $100,000 would be marital. The issue is a lot of times people don't have that documentation. They don't have that supporting evidence to protect that non-marital. And so even though you may have owned the asset prior to the marriage, it could potentially become completely marital if you don't have that. Same thing with retirement accounts. If you have a retirement that has funds in it, you need to, if you don't have a prenuptial agreement, you need to have a copy of what that value was of that retirement account at the time of the marriage. If you have that, that amount will be considered non-marital. But if you don't, then it's going to be considered completely marital. And this is one of the examples that I gave. Going back actually to the house for a moment, if you have a house that has no mortgage on it and you don't do any renovations during the marriage, then that house would stay completely non-marital with or without a prenuptial agreement. It's only the houses that either had a mortgage at the time of the marriage or that you did a renovation and used marital funds during the marriage, then that house that was non-marital becomes marital. In divorces, again, without a prenuptial agreement, the court is going to determine the value of the assets and what is marital. And they're going to put it on one spouse's column and the other spouse's column. And if one spouse has a significant amount more of assets, then they're going to owe the other spouse what's called a monetary award. That monetary award is non-taxable. Actually, since 2018, even alimony is non-taxable, and I am going to get to that in a moment. The court cannot require or force anybody to sell a property or transfer a property to the other spouse that's in their sole name. They can, however, the only exception to that is retirement accounts. They could transfer what's called a qualified domestic relations order to require you to transfer a portion of your retirement to the other spouse. And the other exception is if you owned a home and you guys lived in that home together, what the court calls a family home, the court, and that's jointly titled, the court does have the ability to allow one of the spouses to buy out the other spouse's interest. The issue becomes, and I see this a lot in my practice, is that when a spouse has a lot more assets in their name than the other, and it's not liquidable, it's in a house or it's in a retirement account, it makes it more difficult to be able to pay that monetary award without selling an asset. So these are considerations that need to kind of be thought about before you're married and to consider whether a prenuptial agreement is appropriate. And with a prenuptial agreement, what that allows you to do is either say everything is completely non-marital even before the marriage, which it normally would be anyway, without needing to show the proof of it. And it also could be, okay, this is what we're going to do with our assets during the marriage. Generally speaking, the most common type is to have anything that's in someone's sole name, no matter when it was obtained, during or prior to the marriage, stays completely marital. But you have what I call a blank canvas to do whatever you want to do as it relates to this asset protection. Now, with alimony, there are two types of alimony in Maryland. It's rehabilitative alimony and indefinite, which is really permanent alimony. In a prenuptial agreement, you're able to determine whether or not to just do a complete waiver at the time of a prenuptial agreement, or to say these are the conditions as to if and when alimony would kick in. For example, if it's more than 5 years, then alimony is going to be X. If it's more than 10 years, it's going to be Y. Or it could be if it's individuals that are starting a family, it could be that if one of you decides not to go back to work after having a child, then alimony could potentially kick in. Alimony, generally speaking, is there's a rebuttable presumption for rehabilitative. And what I mean by that is a short time frame, 3, 4, 5 years, to get the non-working spouse back on their feet. Indefinite alimony, the older you become at the time of the divorce, and if there's a large discrepancy of income between the spouses, or there's a medical issue with the spouse who is going to be obtaining alimony, then it becomes indefinite. If you went to court and didn't have this resolved, either because you didn't have a prenuptial agreement or you weren't able to resolve it before a final divorce hearing via what's called a marital settlement agreement, alimony is always modifiable, be it indefinite or rehabilitative. And what that means is if the situation changed after an agreement is reached or a divorce is finalized and you were awarded alimony or you had to pay alimony, you're able to go back and ask the court to either modify it or terminate it. However, you could also put provisions in a prenuptial agreement or a marital settlement agreement that makes it non-modifiable so that you don't necessarily have to worry about needing to go back to court at a later date. There's pros and cons to making alimony non-modifiable in a prenuptial agreement or a marital settlement agreement. I'll tell you that it's always better to settle things either via prenuptial agreement or a marital settlement agreement, because to be frank, the only people that win in a contested divorce case are the attorneys. They're the ones that are going to be ended up having more money in their pocket and less money in your all's pocket. I know it's probably funny hearing that from an attorney that practices family law, but I'm telling you that's the case. And I say that because there's unpredictability of what a court may or may not do. Each judge has their specific and subjective viewpoints on things, especially when it comes to alimony. I can tell you right now, predicting alimony in court is probably one of the most difficult things that you could do. You ask any family law attorney or even judges that handle family law cases on a regular basis, it is extremely subjective on what they do. And judges are smart. They know the key words to say to not get appealed and have their decision overturned. What's on the screen now are some examples of what the court looks at to determine alimony. I can tell you there's 11 total of them, and each judge is able to put their own weight on it. So that goes back to the fact of why having a prenuptial agreement and marital settlement agreement is extremely important. I can tell you that at the end of the day, what I generally see, and I've been seeing more commonly throughout the state of Maryland, is that the judges like to get the lesser earning spouse between 20 to 35% of the combined gross income. And I know that's a big range, and I think that range is there because it goes back to that subjectiveness of it. That if the judge is more sympathetic to the spouse that's going to get alimony, it's going to be closer to the 35%. If they are more sympathetic to the spouse who's going to be paying alimony, then they may be closer to the 20%. So that's why having a sit down prior to marriage, or if you are going to go through a separation, at the time of a separation and trying to reach a resolution, you have that control. Obviously, you don't necessarily have complete control because there's two of you and your spouse, and it takes two to tango, but at least you have that control compared to leaving it to a person that happens to have the word judge in front of their name and wears a fancy black robe. Another reason to try to get this resolved either via a prenuptial agreement or a marital settlement agreement, beyond the cost factor of it and beyond the not having to worry about the unknowns and the what ifs is the time period to this. If you have a signed agreement that resolves all issues, you get it that done before you file for divorce, you'll have one 15-minute Zoom uncontested divorce hearing where only one spouse needs to show up, and you get that within 30 to 60 days of filing for the divorce. Compared to if you have a contested action and it stays contested, if you have children, and depending on the county, some counties are 9 months, and that's really, Calvert County is really the only one. I think Jeff should have, I don't know I didn't touch anything, so I don't know what happened there. Thank you, Jeff. The smaller counties like Calvert County, Queen Anne's County, St. Mary's County, they are, with or without children, much quicker. Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Baltimore County, you're looking, if you have, thank you, Jeff. If you have children, you're looking from anywhere from 12 to 18 months with and I say children, I mean minor children under the age of 18. You're looking anywhere from 12 to 18 months with several court appearances. Some are via Zoom, most now are in person. And if you don't have children, again, on the larger counties, Anne Arundel, Howard, you're still looking to about a year from start to finish with at least 2 or 3 court appearances. And a lot of time. Going through a divorce process is going to take up a lot of your time if it's contested. So sitting down and getting educated on what your rights and options are, both short-term and long-term, as well as legal and non-legal, is the best way to be able to protect yourself and your assets, not only for yourself, but for your children or other loved ones. And it's extremely important, and Steve brought up a good point when he talked about Medicaid, and actually Steve brought this to my attention, and we've been running with it a lot due to Steve's thought process of you could protect yourself even if you are still madly in love with your spouse. You could do what we've kind of called a Medicaid divorce, where you're divorced on paper so that you are able to protect your assets from a retirement home or other ones. And so that's something that you definitely should not only talk about with a family law attorney, but also an estate planning attorney like Steve, who is extremely focused on educating and ensuring that his clients get the best outcome that they can with all the different options that are available out there. And I'll leave with that aspect of, if you find yourself that you do have to file for divorce and get divorced, one of the biggest things you need to do afterwards is to go someone like Steve, and should be only Steve, and get your wills redone or get your estate planning redone, and make sure that your spouse, your ex-spouse, doesn't have any rights to your estate moving forward. And so again, I want to thank Steve for allowing me to speak with you all, and I hope you got some education out of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go home to my wife and tell her I saw a family law attorney this morning. Our next presenter is Mr. Maximilian Reamer, advisor with the Quantum Group, who provides comprehensive insurance solutions for business owners, professionals, individuals, and families utilizing wealth creation, wealth preservation, and tax mitigation strategies. Max holds a Maryland Life and Health producer license. Steve and I had breakfast with Max late last year, and we're really amazed at the extremely high-level comprehensive analysis and solutions that he provides clients. Max has analyzed several policies for our clients and provided on-point solutions that fit their current and future goals for their families. So Max, thank you for being here today, and the podium is yours. Thanks for being here.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve, Jeff, and the rest of Elville Associates for having me today. My name is Max Reamer, and I am an advisor at the Quantum Group, where all we do is life and long-term care insurance. So that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about with you guys today, is just life and long-term care insurance and how it relates to estate planning. And the title of my conversation is Detecting the Signal from the Noise. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of noise out there as far as what to do and what not to do when it relates to life insurance and long-term care insurance. So my hopes is after this conversation, you guys have the tools that you need to detect the signal from that noise as far as what is best for you and your family for your specific estate planning when it comes to life and long-term care insurance. So in this conversation, what we're going to discuss is, one, how to obtain the most effective life insurance for your estate plan. Two, how to potentially leverage your existing life insurance policy for your current goals and objectives in regards to your estate plan. And then lastly, we're going to talk about long-term care insurance and how you can utilize a long-term care insurance product to protect against your estate. So there's really two main life insurance products that folks obtain, the first being term insurance. And what term insurance is it is a guaranteed death benefit for a finite number of years, whether it's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or 30 years. And the fact of the matter is only 3% of these term policies actually pay out. 97%, roughly 97% of the time, clients end up outliving the term insurance protection. So because of that, when it comes to estate planning, we utilize permanent life insurance products, and permanent life insurance is exactly what it sounds like. Just if designed properly, it is life insurance protection in which the clients cannot outlive. So when we're dealing with life insurance in regards to estate planning, typically clients are either approaching retirement or they are in retirement. And at those given ages, as we all know, health issues and concerns are prevalent, whether it's mild, moderate, or even severe. So when we are obtaining new life insurance policies, the first line of defense as far as ensuring that that life insurance policy is going to be the most effective for an estate plan is underwriting. What underwriting dictates essentially is what your premium cost is. So the higher risk you are as far as from a health standpoint to the insurance company, the higher your premiums are going to be. So when you are implementing a new life insurance policy, the first line of defense is making sure you are obtaining the most favorable underwriting rates that you can obtain to ensure that your premium is priced effectively. So there's two main ways in which clients go through underwriting. The first is formal underwriting. And what formal underwriting entails is an actual formal application to the life insurance company, and most of the times it is accompanied by a medical exam. With formal underwriting comes the MIB, and we're not talking about the Men in Black here, but I had to put it up, Shout out to Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. But what the MIB is the Medical Information Bureau. The Medical Information Bureau was founded in 1902, and its main purpose is to record formal underwriting results within its organization. So every time you go through a formal life insurance application process, those results are coded in the MIB, in which any time that you formally apply to a life insurance company in the future, those results of your formal underwriting results are going to be coded there, so that life insurance company that you apply to afterwards is going to see those results. And where that is a detriment in regards to life insurance underwriting is if you formally apply somewhere right off the bat and you get if you get an unfavorable underwriting rating, well, you just lost your leverage to apply somewhere else, because wherever that company may be when you are applying somewhere else is going to see that unfavorable underwriting result that has already been coded in the MIB. So you essentially lose leverage, because why would that second life insurance company in which you formally applied to give you a favorable rating when they've already seen the initial life insurance company give you an unfavorable rating? So how we combat this is informal underwriting. It is a much more benign process than formal underwriting, in which all it is you go to your insurance professional and you sign a HIPAA form. And what that allows your insurance professional to do is obtain your medical records in-house. And from there, their in-house underwriter curates a medical history summary. And with that summary, they will shop you out informally to all the life insurance companies, in which those companies will give you an informal underwriting offer that is not coded in the MIB. So I want to point out an example here. We had a 65-year-old looking for $2.5 million of permanent insurance for his estate planning needs. I'm not going to go over every single result with every single life insurance company, but I want to highlight two. The first being Protective Life. He was a straight-up decline, meaning in Protective, and this goes to show how vast the difference is in far as different life insurance companies view health risks differently all across the board. So for this specific client, he ended up getting, on an informal basis, this is not coded in the MIB, but he got a decline from Protective. John Hancock gave him a preferred non-smoker rate, which is an extremely favorable underwriting rating. From there, we formally applied to John Hancock, and we solidified that preferred non-smoker rate on a formal basis. However, had we have gone through formal underwriting with Protective and gotten that formal decline, we would have lost leverage, in which if we would have reapplied to John Hancock, sure, they most likely would have given him coverage, but not at preferred non-smoker rates. So it really behooves you to move forward with the informal underwriting process before any sort of formal application, to protect you against any unfavorable underwriting results off the bat that is coded in the Medical Information Bureau. Once we have the underwriting, once we hone in on which company has got to give us the best underwriting rate, the second line of defense, as far as ensuring that you're obtaining the most effective life insurance policy for your estate plan, is product analysis. As that first line showed us, there are a number of permanent life insurance products. So again, once we hone in on the life insurance company from an underwriting standpoint, we want to hone in on what type of product is most effective for your current estate plan. So here's a scenario in which these clients were looking for a survivorship policy, a second to die policy, meaning the death benefit is paid on the second death. We have a couple with the respective ages of 56 and 53, and their estate planning goal was to fund a trust. And they needed to fund that trust for $1 million. So naturally, they wanted to use life insurance as the funding mechanism. So what we wanted to, so what we were looking for is how do we obtain $1 million permanent life insurance policy for the most cost-effective premium, but in which the $1 million benefit was going to be guaranteed through their extended mortality, meaning ages 100 plus. And I can absolutely nerd out on you guys and go through every single product here, but I'm going to spare you guys this Saturday morning. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch on two. The first being is this prudential policy, and I have a nifty pointer right here. So we have this prudential policy in which the $1 million of benefit is guaranteed to their respective ages 111 and 108. So here we have a $1 million policy that is guaranteed through their extended mortality. That premium cost is roughly $9,600 in perpetuity on an annual basis. Again, I'm not going to go through every single example, but I want to compare that to this Mass Mutual survivorship whole life policy. For the same $1 million of death benefit that is guaranteed to their extended mortality as well, that premium is more than double. So now we're looking at more than $20,000 in perpetuity on an annual basis. There's a lot of noise on this spreadsheet, right? You have cash value increases, and if you look in this bottom column here, you see that the death benefit for this product actually grows. So at their respective ages, 85 and 83, that $1 million benefit with this whole life product grows from $1 million to $1.7 million. So one might say, hey, whole life has all these positive attributes in this situation where you have cash value that is built up in the policies that acts sort of as equity. And the death benefit grows from, $1 million to $1.7 million. I'm telling you now, this is all noise, because for this specific client need, all they needed is $1 million to fund that trust, and it's our job to cut through the noise, find the signal as far as how do we ensure this policy in the most cost-effective premium, which is that $9,600, because that's ultimately what is going to make this the most effective wealth transfer tool. The lower the premium, the higher the internal rate of return is on that death. So we want to make sure that we are implementing policies with the most cost-effective premium. So we cut through all that noise here, and we just had the clients go with this prudential policy in which they're not overinsured. It stays $1 million, 1.7 they would have been massively overinsured, and we kept their premium as cost-effective as possible. A lot of times when we're dealing with life insurance in regards to estate planning, clients already have existing policies. They don't need to obtain new policies altogether. So then we take a step back and we look at that existing policy and we say, hey, how has it performed in the past? How is it going to perform in the future? And based upon the client's current goals and objectives, which most likely have changed since the policy's inception, which may be 20 plus years ago, is this policy still the best for the client's current goals and objectives in regards to their estate planning? So I want to go over two examples here. The first example is we have another survivorship policy in which the client has $1 million policy that is guaranteed to their extended mortality at their respective ages 107 and 105, and they are paying roughly $5,100 of premium on an annual basis. These clients within this policy has accrued $77,000 of cash value within this policy. You can think of cash value sort of as equity in which you can roll over that equity into another life insurance policy via a tax-free 1035 exchange. So when we were looking at this existing policy, the clients wanted to know, hey, can we leverage our $77,000 of cash value into a new policy in which we still have $1 million of guaranteed death benefit, but can we mitigate our premiums with that leverage of $77,000 of cash value? And what we found is if we're leveraging that $77,000 of cash value for that same $1 million of guaranteed death benefit, the premiums are going to range from $11,000 to $16,000. So in this scenario, what we were able to do is say, hey, what you have now is actually still the most effective policy for your estate planning needs, which is just to fund a trust for $1 million. So we were able to have that client come back with the peace of mind that we are in the best scenario, and their trustee was able to paper their files saying, you know what, we reviewed this policy, and this is in fact the best product/policy for the client still. The next example I want to give is a client that had a $200,000 permanent policy. He was 67 years old, and he was paying no further premium, 0 premium. Even though it was great that he was paying no further premiums, the guarantees on his policy, on the existing policy, was just at his age 78. He had $149,000 of cash value. So what he wanted to determine was, can we leverage that $149,000 of cash value into another policy in which I still have my $200,000 death benefit, but I want to get those guarantees up. And there's a lot of noise, again, on this spreadsheet where you could see this John Hancock policy. If you were to leverage that $149,000 of cash value, we could potentially get over $300,000 of death benefit. But you could see that the guarantees on that policy was only to his age 86. So we cut through the noise. What is the client's main objectives? It's just to maintain the death benefit with higher guarantees. So because of that, Prudential was able, again, with no further premium, to provide $233,000 of death benefit. So we got $33,000 more of death benefit, and we were able to bump his guarantees up to age 100 with him still not paying any further premium. So again, where is the signal from all this noise? The Hancock was pretty noisy with over $100,000 more of death benefit, but we really wanted to determine which product was going to give us the best guarantees for that same no further premium. Now, let's talk about long-term care. Let's switch gears here. What qualifies a client for a long-term care event? If you cannot perform 2 of the 6 ADLs, which are the activities of daily living, such as eating, bathing, dressing, grooming, mobility, and toileting, you qualify for a long-term care event in which that policy is going to pay out because, again, you qualify to be on claim. So whether or not it's from dementia, Alzheimer's, cancer, stroke, as long as your doctor can write a note to the insurance company that says, hey, my client cannot perform 2 of the 6 ADLs, you qualify for a long-term care claim. Now, let's talk about the 2 main long-term care products or policies, if you will, that can protect your estate from a long-term care event. The first is a traditional long-term care policy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you column by column to share with you the story as far as how these long-term care policies work. And this actually is somewhat of a unique situation because the client the client that we did these quotes for was 44 years old, which is pretty young for being in the long-term care market. Typically, we're looking for clients around the age of 50 to 65, but unfortunately, this client's mother was going through a long-term care event, and she was not properly insured, so it really hit close to home for him, and he wanted to make sure that this was not the case for himself and his family. So here we have the carrier, Mutual of Omaha, the Comdex score of 91, which essentially is just saying the company is extremely financially stable. You have an annual premium of a little over $4,000, and what that is getting us is an initial monthly long-term care benefit of $7,500 that comes to the client tax-free. The key here is initial, and the reason why I say that is because since the client is 44, he most likely isn't going to need this policy for another 30 plus years. So the one thing we do know is that the cost of care is going to rise. How much, who the heck knows, but we want to ensure that this policy still keeps up as far as purchasing power for when he does need it 30, 40, 50 years from now. So in order to protect the purchasing power of a long-term care benefit, most of these policies have inflation riders. So you could see this 3% inflation rider. And what this is doing is it is increasing this monthly long-term care benefit by 3% on a compounding basis year after year after year. So let's highlight age 80, which is typically the average age of a long-term care event. This $7,500 of initial monthly long-term care benefit with the 3% inflation rider now grows to over $21,000 of initial monthly long-term care benefit. And how these policies work is essentially you're buying a pool of money. And for this initial quote, the long-term care duration was 4 years. So what that is saying is if this client needed to access this policy at his age 80, and if he exhausted the $21,000 and change of maximum benefit month after month, year after year, he would have had over $1 million of tax-free long-term care benefit. So just think about that for a second. The cumulative premium that he would have paid for this policy is roughly $147,000. So with that cumulative premium of $147,000, if he had a long-term care event at age 80, he would have had access to over $1 million of tax-free benefit. And there's no volatility. This isn't saying that the $147,000 of cumulative premium was invested in the market. This was contractually guaranteed with a long-term care insurance policy. So that's really where your leverage kicks into place. Two other columns that we didn't touch on is the elimination period. Typically, long-term care policies have elimination periods in which, in this example, it's 90 days, meaning once you qualify for a long-term care event, you have to suffice the elimination period of 90 days, and then you would be paid that very next day. So in this example, if the client had a long-term care event, the monthly benefit would have kicked in on the 91st day. The concept behind this is that we know that it stings having to go out of pocket for the first 3 months of a long-term care event, but that's technically a short-term event. And what we want to protect against is that long-term care event. So that's where we really hone in on the 3 months to however many years of the long-term care event in which we want to insure against. The last column we didn't go over is the benefit type. So with traditional policies, the benefit type is called reimbursement, meaning the client goes out of pocket the first of each month to pay for his or her long-term care expenses, but then the long-term care company would then reimburse them on the back end. It's not so much of a pain in the butt as you would think. They have claim liaisons, etc., that help you itemize your expenses, but there is a more attractive benefit type, which we'll get into a little bit later. The two things that are not on this slide are the following. One, for traditional long-term care policies, these premiums are not guaranteed. I'm sure either on your own long-term care policies or with loved ones with their traditional long-term care policies, you may have been paying in this thing for 10, 15, 20 years of the initial quoted premium, but then you get a letter in the mail saying, hey, in order to maintain your current long-term care benefit, we're going to increase your premiums by 30%. Or in order to maintain your current premium, you're going to have to decrease your benefit by 30%. The other thing that's not presented on this slide is there's no death benefit or return of premium feature baked into these traditional long-term care policies. Meaning, if you pay into this traditional long-term care policy forever until you pass away in your sleep and you didn't need it for any long-term care purposes, your premium is essentially down the drain. You don't have anything to show for the cumulative premium that you've already put into this policy. It's sort of if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Those two main factors, the premiums not being guaranteed and if you don't use it, you lose it, are two huge pain points in the long-term care consumer market. Because of this, long-term care companies, in order to combat those two pain points within the market, came up with hybrid long-term care, and I like to call it asset-based long-term care, and I'll explain to you why a little bit later. So here you have some familiar columns that we just went over, and also some new columns. So for the same 44-year-old, for the same $7,500 of initial monthly long-term care benefit, the premium is higher, a little over $12,000. The reason being is because for these hybrid policies, typically they are paid up within 10 years. So you can see this premium duration is a 10 pay, meaning he has 10 years of annual premium, and then the policy is completely paid up. And all of these premiums are completely guaranteed, meaning if it's within the premium pay duration, he's not going to get a notice saying, hey, your 7th year premium has got to be increased. Or once it's paid up, let's say in year 20, he will never get a notice in the mail saying you need to put more premium into this. So you have the initial $7,500 of long-term care benefit. So these given ages on the right-hand column are going to be the same values that we just went over on the previous slide. You have the elimination period at 90 days as well. What's new here is a death benefit. So what you see with these hybrid policies is there is a death benefit associated with these policies, meaning if you do not tap into this for any long-term care needs, your beneficiary would get $180,000 in this policy tax-free. And this is a return of premium feature. This is if you don't use it, you still don't lose the cumulative premiums that you have put into this policy. There's also a residual death benefit in which even if you do tap into this policy for long-term care benefits, your beneficiary will still get a $36,000 residual death benefit. You know, it's not going to move the needle all that much. It's really just a burial expense, but it's not a bad feature of the policy. There is also a literal return of premium rider associated with these policies, meaning if you do not want to wait for any sort of return of premiums when you're 6 feet under, you can wipe your hands clean of the policy while you're still living. So let's say it's year 30, the client is now 74, and he says, you know what, I don't want this long-term care policy anymore. You can go ahead and cash it out for either the majority of the premium that you cumulatively have put into the policy, or for the majority of the premium. The benefit type for most of these hybrid policies are indemnity. So this is different than the reimbursement benefit type, meaning you actually get the benefit on the first of every single month, and you don't have to go through any reimbursement process. And then you'll see that the values are the same at those highlighted ages. To bring this all full circle, the reason why we call, or I like to call it, asset-based long-term care is the following. From a conceptual standpoint, what we're doing is we are taking a portion of your assets from your estate plan. So in this scenario, a little over $120,000 from your estate plan, redistributing it to this long-term care protection policy, knowing that if you have a long-term care event, your estate is protected because you have the leverage right here. However, if you do not need this for long-term care, those assets, the $120,000 of assets that you put into this policy via the cumulative premium, if you do not need it, is going to be redistributed again back into your estate, either via the death benefit or the return of premium feature. So again, I really want to thank you guys for your attentiveness on this Saturday morning of talking life insurance and long-term care insurance, but I just wanted to open the floor up if anybody has any questions regarding life insurance or long-term care insurance in regards to estate planning. Yes. Yeah, that's a great point and question. Um, Mouth is a little dry here. It's such a great question. I'm going to go ahead and wet my beak. So you pointed out, can you 1035, meaning can you take existing cash value from one policy and dump it into one of these hybrid long-term care policies? The answer is yes. You cannot take, there's no cash accumulation within traditional long-term care policies, so it's not like you're going to transfer a traditional long-term care policy to a hybrid long-term care policy. However, what's really neat about these hybrid long-term care policies is you can take existing cash value from a life insurance policy and 1035 it into a hybrid long-term care policy, because in order to qualify for that 1035 tax-free exchange, it has to be a like-to-like product from a product standpoint. So because these hybrid long-term care policies has that life insurance rider, the IRS deems it as a like-to-like 1035. So we gave you two scenarios in which the clients evaluated their current life insurance policies, and they wanted to know, hey, can we leverage our cash value into another life insurance policy, whether to get the guarantees up or to mitigate premiums? An outside-the-box thought would be, if you don't need any life insurance, whether the kids are out of the house or, as Steve mentioned, the exemptions are just ridiculously high, but long-term care insurance is a focal point of your estate planning, you can take that cash value of your within your life insurance policy and then 1035 it into a hybrid long-term care policy. And what that could do is, in the example in which I showed, the client had $149,000 of cash value. What could have happened if he didn't want to maintain that $200,000 of death benefit from a life insurance standpoint and just wanted to focus on long-term care? He 100% could have taken that $149,000 of cash value, do a tax-free 1035 into one of these hybrid long-term care policies, and completely fund his long-term care planning. So to your point, yes, you can, but it's not going to be a traditional long-term care to a hybrid long-term care. It would be a traditional life insurance permanent policy to a hybrid long-term care policy.
So if you don't have life insurance, but you do have a traditional long-term care policy, it cannot be converted or transferred.
Correct. So in those scenarios, what we do is we would just say, hey, let's take a look at your traditional long-term care policy. You're paying $4,000 for X benefit. What, for that same benefit, at your current age, could we purchase from a hybrid long-term care policy? And if it is within the same ballpark, let's say it may be $6,000 a year in premium for that same initial long-term care benefit within the hybrid policy, we have a conversation. If it's $20,000 a year, you're most likely going to want to stick with that traditional long-term care policy. Yeah. Yes, in the back. Absolutely. Yep. So, I don't know, I'm not a financial planner, so take this with a grain of salt, but what I've learned from all the noise out there, from the internet, et cetera, is an emergency fund should be comprised of 3 months of expenses. So either the emergency fund that you've already built up can suffice your long-term care expenses, or an HSA account, et cetera. So really, wherever you have access to funds, you would want to deploy within that elimination period before the tax-free long-term care benefit kicks in. Yes. You know what? That is a good question. I am not 100% sure because I'm not a Medicaid specialist, but I'd love to get you that answer when I speak with my Medicaid specialist as well.
Max, I'll just chime in real quick.
Yeah,
Right, that's
thank
a
you.
great question, and I think the question was, how does long-term care insurance play into a Medicaid plan? So when someone says, hey, I want to protect assets and I want to get real proactive on that, and I want to start the 5-year look period, if you've ever heard of that, we have to get ahead of Medicaid spend down by 5 years. The question is, who's going to pay for long-term care during the 5 years? So if you have a long-term care policy or a hybrid policy, now you're pretty much guaranteeing the success of your Medicaid plan. So in other words, it's a tool to make sure you can get through the 5 years, because that's the whole idea, is to start the 5 years.
Thank you, Steve.
Any last questions for Max or for Evan and Steve from before? Okay, very good. Max, thank you.
I know you got it. Let's make sure that it has Evan's information. I don't think it got it on the screen.
Oh, it's not there.
Well, the last slide, he never clicked through the last slide.
Oh, okay. All right. Does he have? Shannon, let's get those door prizes taken care of.
Okay, more door prizes, and I've enlisted 2 helpers. I have Gideon and Danica, who are going to pull the names for us. Gideon, you're up. Oh, let me describe the prize. Hang on. We have tickets to the Columbia Orchestra at Jim Rouse Theater to see music by Dvorak and Shostakovich on Saturday, December 2nd at 7 p.m. And the winner is? I can't read. Lynn Schultz. Very nice, Lynn. You want to take them now? You want to take them now? You might.
Thank you.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay.
Okay. She already took them, so. And the next prize is Baltimore Classical Guitar Society, debuting Petra Pokalava and Lovo Peretic on March 30th at the Linehan Concert Hall at the UMBC campus, March 30th.
That's really impressive pronunciation, Liz.
Was that good? Did I do good? I wasn't
Very
even
good.
attempting the rest of it, so that's okay. Larry Schultz. Okay, I have a strict policy. If two people win at the same table, I'm going to sit there and play the lottery tonight. Is this chair taken? No. There you go. Now you can take each other as dates. There you go. Here, I'll give these to you while I'm at it. All right, you two. I'm going to watch you go. Okay, Danny, you're up again. Oh. Larry, it would help if I gave you. There you go. Okay, what is the next one? Let's do a basket. This is the Caramel Lovers box with dipping caramel. It has ginger biscuits, sea salt caramels, dipping wheat pretzels, dried apples, and more dipping caramels. And the winner is? Mary Ellen Gracie? Oh, there she is. Mary Ellen, we'll keep it up here for you, okay? When you come get it at the end.
Okay, before we get to our next presentation, I want to make sure that you saw Evan's contact information. I think we jumped over it earlier. All of our presenters have information out front, so when you do leave, if you want to grab a card or any other information, it is out there as well. So you can screenshot this. I'm also going to send out the presentation by email to everybody afterwards, but not today, on Monday. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who Steve and I have known for a very long time. Mark Timmick is the founder of Timmick Financial Group, as well as a chartered retirement planning consultant and an investment advisor representative who works closely with clients to develop plans and investment programs that lead to successful retirement outcomes, and we all want that. Mark is also licensed in life, health, and long-term care insurance. He is a frequent public speaker on retirement financial planning, and his personal mission is to make a meaningful difference in the lives of those he is called to serve. Steve and I have been fortunate to present with Mark for the past 8 years as part of his semi-annual 3-evening retirement series, which includes estate planning, savvy social security planning, and maximizing retirement income. Mark, we appreciate your long-standing friendship and partnership here with the firm, and thanks for being here today. Come on up. Have your clock here as well.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for having me this morning. Thank you, Steve, for our longstanding partnership and our commitment to client education, but also to jointly serving client relationships together as an advisory team. So I value this partnership. Steve asked me to come today to talk about asset protection elements of retirement plans. So I know this is information that everyone would be interested in. I'm going to start here at a high level talking about some large concepts related to retirement planning. When you think about retirement planning and developing a financial plan for retirement, obviously you think about your assets. It includes all of these things in this first box here. But my view of retirement planning is, and certainly when we're talking about protecting something, we're really trying to protect our goals. I view money as a means to an end, and that end for most of us is maintaining a lifestyle, living how we want to live, making sure we don't have financial stress and worry, and doing the things that we want to be doing and that we love. So when we talk about asset protection, I'm viewing that as protecting our goals and our lifestyle. Now, when it comes to protecting assets, there are many things that can come along that can cause our portfolio and our wealth to go from something up here to something significantly less. These are listed here. I'm going to talk about the first 7 of these in my presentation today. The rest are being talked about by other presenters and Steve and his firm. But what we have to do is then layer in
all of the tools that we have at our disposal to protect against those risks. And when we protect against those risks, we're protecting our assets, and then when we protect our assets, we're protecting our goals. The very first thing that we have to do with our assets is make sure that we structure a reliable income stream for ourselves in retirement. There are many ways to do that. I do a whole 2-hour presentation on all of the techniques and methods for that, just touching on this at a high level today. But that's the first goal of retirement planning, is making sure that our base level of income is accounted for and taken care of and structured in a reliable way that will last as long as we do as individuals. The second thing is making sure that we have a pool of resources set aside from our portfolio that can address any kind of contingency. This would be reserve money set aside to deal with things like replacing a roof or an HVA system, or anything that, buy a new car, those kind of things. So we have to have a pool of money set aside outside of the money from the portfolio that's going to be generating our regular income. So those things are kind of the high-level elements of how I view retirement financial planning. And I want to go into talk about the first 7 of these risks in a little bit more detail. The first thing that I want to talk about is life expectancy. So I showed longevity on the previous slide as a risk. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of longevity as a risk. Most of us, if we enjoy and happen to have longevity, view that as a positive thing. It's a negative thing from a financial perspective because we have to make our money last longer when we live longer. So it's important to understand life expectancy, and there are 2 basic ways to look at this. One is looking at life expectancy for all births. Everyone that was ever born, what's the life expectancy, looking at that whole cohort of people, which is everyone in our country. And if you do a Google search on life expectancy, you'll see that men have an average life expectancy of 77 and women 82. Now, an interesting phenomena exists with life expectancy, and that is that every year you age, your life expectancy goes up. I'm not going to explain why actuarially that's the case, but another way to look at life expectancy is to start measuring average life expectancy with just the cohort of people that make it to age 65. All right? So looking at that, we can do actuarial analysis, and we come up with much different numbers than the overall life expectancy. And you can see this first line here on this chart, this 50% chance of living line, that's going to be average life expectancy for this cohort of people, age 65 and older. And you see a male now has a life expectancy of 87. That's 10 years more than total population. And a female has age 90, which is 8 years longer than looking at the entire population. And then you can see here the 25% chance line and the 10% chance line. So we have to make sure that our retirement financial plan can address the possibility of longevity. And we do that in a number of different ways, through the portfolio, structuring investments geared more towards income. We might layer in annuities for lifetime income, that kind of thing, depending on your particular financial situation. All right, so I want to talk just briefly about inflation. Inflation is front and center for us these days, right? The last couple of years, as we've been coming out of the COVID low interest rate environment that we were in, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates significantly over the last year and a half, and that is to address rising inflation. So in 2022, inflation ran around, I think it was 8.7%. Total inflation. So inflation is the rising costs of goods and services. We pay more to get the same thing. And so we have to address this, and it's important to understand wealth in terms of buying power, right? What our money can buy for us. And I'll give you a couple of examples. If we have inflation running at 3%, meaning the costs of goods and services that we consume are rising by 3%, and our portfolio is earning 4%, we're staying ahead of inflation. We're actually growing our purchasing power by 1%. all right? Now, if we look at the converse of that, if we have inflation running at 5%, inflation running at 5%, our portfolio is generating 4%, we're losing purchasing power by 1%. Even though we're making 4% on the portfolio, we are losing ground financially. And so it's really important to understand wealth and the maintenance of wealth as staying ahead of inflation. Otherwise, we are, by definition, heading backwards. And you can see here, with 3% inflation, your purchasing power is cut in half in 24 years, and running at 5% is cut in half in 15 years. And then, of course, I find this interesting. I came across this concept several years ago, and I always find it fascinating and interesting to watch as I'm a consumer out in the world. It's called shrinkflation. Anybody heard of shrinkflation before? Right? So this is where product manufacturers and service providers keep the price the same, but in some way they reduce the quantity, quality of the product itself. And I'll give you a perfect example. Anybody here like Lido's Pizza? I'm a Lido's Pizza fan. I went to the University of Maryland. I went to the original Lido's just off campus at College Park there. So I was bred to be a Lido's Pizza consumer. I still get Lido's Pizza occasionally, but the pizzas have gotten smaller. They have gotten smaller. So one of the ways that company has addressed inflation is they make their product smaller. They might have a combination of raising the price and reducing the product size or quantity. But it's something really to watch for. It's hidden. It's really hard to see shrinkflation happen. It's hard to see inflation in general happening, but it's even harder to see it happen with shrinkflation. So something interesting to watch there. The solution for inflation is growth. Growth to stay ahead of the rate of inflation. Now, generally what that means is we have to invest in investment vehicles that produce higher rates of return. And generally, when we're seeking higher rates of return, we take on more risk from potential market losses. So how do we balance these? Let's talk about market losses. You can't see this chart, I know, but this is just showing S&P 500 index annual returns from 1928 through 2023. It's not really important to see the rates of return other than really just recognizing the wide range and variation of returns that you can experience. The midpoint there is 0% return. It's the black line. Everything below it is a loss. Everything above it is a gain, and they're varying degrees here. You can see the average loss, just averaging the losses over that period of time, down 14.9%. That's the average loss. The average gain is 18%, and if you average everything together, it's 7.7 over this time period, 7.7% positive return. Now, if we have to invest some of our portfolio in the market to stay ahead of inflation, we have to manage this, right? So the first thing that I want to point out with this is the most important thing is managing ourselves more than our portfolio, and it's managing fear more specifically. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second, but it's that emotional reaction that we might have when something negative happens in the market. And our reflexive reaction and response is to do something about it. We need to make the portfolio more conservative, get out of the market, whatever it is. Now, many of you I know are good investors and you don't do that, but some people still are very triggered by an economic situation. There's plenty happening in the world to be concerned about on this. The thing that I really want to point out here, though, is that you don't lose if the market's down. You lose if you sell when the market's down, right? If you haven't sold, you haven't lost. And it's the same with your house, right? So the way I like to have people think about the stock market and stock market investing is to think about investing in your home. There have been periods of time where our home values have gone down in value. 2008, perfect example. Leading up to 2008, all of our home values were rising. We were very happy with all that. 2008, the mortgage bubble crashes. Our home values go down significantly. Does anybody think, oh, my home's going to go to zero. I better get out now. I better cash out and walk away with whatever I can get. Nobody thinks that, right? You think, if I don't need to move, I just wait it out, right? If I don't have to sell my home and move to go somewhere, I just wait it out, right? The same concept and principle should exist with your stock market investments. You are investing in real things when you're in the stock market, real companies with real brands and real products and copyrights and all kinds of really valuable plant and equipment and all that kind of stuff. You are investing in something real and tangible, although to you it might feel intangible because you own some number of shares of something that just shows on a paper statement. So anyway, really important, I think, concept to manage fear. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here coming up. I do a whole 2-hour presentation on this. There's a lot to talk about in terms of what's available, specifically in terms of investment vehicles to help us manage risk. Some are better than others. I really want to point out a couple of things with this slide. One is our safe investments. We all know what these are. We've heard about them before. The FDIC insured bank account, CDs, all that stuff. Our growth investments, we kind of know about. It's our stocks, individual stocks, our stock funds or ETFs that we own. We know how those work. They ride the ups and downs of the market, just like we were talking about before. What's relatively new in the space here, really just in the last probably 5 to 8 years, is this kind of middle ground, which we call somewhat safe investments. And these are something called structured notes, you might have heard before, bonds, which you know about, but individual bonds held to maturity, as opposed to owning your bonds in a mutual fund or an ETF, tend to be a better way to enjoy the protected elements of investing in bonds. Bonds, as we've had a rising interest rate environment here, bond funds, if you're invested in them, you've seen them go down just as much in 2022 as you did your stock portfolio. They were significant. They were no help at preserving wealth like we would normally expect in a regular environment. So really important that when you have bonds, that you own them in the right form, so that you can enjoy the benefits that they provide. What's really new in terms of, investment product on the marketplace today are things called loss buffered ETFs and loss buffered annuities. The principle, I'm going to give you just a principle base concept here for what these are. Built into the product, you make an investment, say you invest $100,000 into one of these products. Built into the product is some downside buffering protection. So you're invested in a stock market index with this product. So you can invest in the S&P 500 index, and you can enjoy 15% downside protection. So the first 15% of any market loss in the index is picked up by the fund itself. You're protected from that. But you would incur any losses before that. After that. So if the market was down 10%, you'd be 100% protected. If the market was down 20%, your investment would be down 5% because the first 15 are covered by the product itself. Now, with these products, what you have to accept is an upside cap or an upside maximum. So you enjoy the growth of the index up to that capped maximum. That's the basic concept of it. But they've become very popular. There's a lot of interest in these days. They're in two forms. You can get them regular ETFs, and you can get them in the form of an annuity as well. Generally speaking, when I'm structuring retirement plans for individuals, we're leaning towards having some of all three of these main categories. Some very safe investments, some somewhat safe investments, and then obviously our growth investments, our traditional stock investments. In retirement, what we have to make sure that we have covered is a place to go to take withdrawals when we need money for something, where we don't have to sell our stock if it's down. So you have to have enough set aside to cover just about any contingency. That could be your regular income that you're providing yourself from your portfolio, but it also could be the big ticket items, to buy a new car, go on a big vacation, replace a roof, like we were talking about before. So really important to adequately and accurately assess that. That's how much is in each bucket is really individualized based on your goals, needs, and tolerance for risk. Some non-investment vehicle solutions for dealing with market risk. One is having a comprehensive financial plan in retirement. You don't want to wing your financial life in retirement. It can too often lead to unplanned, unanticipated, unprepared for circumstances that you might have to deal with if you didn't have a formal financial plan. Using something called Monte Carlo simulation when we're trying to forecast out how long our money can actually last us. And Monte Carlo simulation is really kind of a neat tool. It allows us to do a financial model, prepare and build a financial model for an individual's particular financial situation. And we do a forecast from the day that I'm meeting with a client all the way through age 100. And what it allows us to do is once we have this model set up, is it allows us to run thousands of iterations of different market returns, different market environments that could occur over your lifetime. And once we do that, we can use that data to produce probability charts for how long your money can last, which ultimately translates into you being able to see graphically and build confidence in a particular retirement plan, and more specifically, a drawdown plan from your portfolio, taking withdrawals out of your portfolio to live on. We don't want to draw down too quickly because we could put ourselves on a path to running out of money. We don't want to, draw down too little because that might mean that we're limiting our lifestyle and our enjoyment in retirement, and we don't want to do that either. So it's trying to find that balance point. Monte Carlo simulation is the tool to do that. Having a clear portfolio strategy. This is critically important. Making sure that we're using all the tools available, that we have diversification across those tools. We've cordoned off sufficient protected assets to be able to provide for all of our needs during retirement. And what's the allocation between stock and bonds, and within stocks, how much do we have in large cap, mid cap, small cap, international, all that stuff. All part of that portfolio strategy, but having it conscious and thought out as opposed to random or I like that fund this year. We don't want to do that. We don't want to chase performance. We don't want to just move money around because we like something new and interesting to us. And then of course adding into this basic investor education. So sometimes people will come to me and they want to just have me manage their financial life or come up with a plan and let me worry about all the details. My best clients are the ones that have a base level of investor education, how to be a good investor. It's really important. I know Steve and his firm believe in this as well, and his best clients I know are the ones that have come to his seminars and workshops and gotten themselves educated. It's a more intelligent and productive conversation when you're sitting at the table. There's just a foundational way to view the world that's really helpful with this. It was so important to me that I felt the need and the compulsion to put together a document that communicates to the people that I work with what I would want them to know about finances in general, about understanding markets, giving them the right perspectives and philosophies as a foundation for being a good investor. I serve those people better who understand this. We have more of a common language to talk about these types of things. I'm making this available to everyone here. Just go to the address off of my website here. You can download a PDF of this. No cost. Please do it. You'll learn at least one important thing of value out of it. I'm hoping it'll be a lot more than that. But please take the time to go in and read this and educate yourself. All right, so that's market loss. Let's talk about fear. Fear. We were talking about what fear makes us do when the markets go down. I mean, S&P 500 index in 2022 was down 21%. So some people look at their statements and they say, wow, my financial future is in jeopardy. And especially if you're in retirement and you're living off of your money, as opposed to maybe being 10 years out. 10 years out, you say, well, we have time to recover the portfolio. But it's fear. When fear kicks in, fear causes us to make mistakes. Fear causes us to become irrational. Fear causes us to lose sight of principles. and lose sight of discipline. And so it's really important. I emphasize this over and over. It's a theme throughout my investment thesis, but really important that all of us address fear in productive ways, okay? And so fear is your biggest enemy. These are investor education topics or principles. I'm just gonna point out 11 of them. They're interspersed throughout my thesis here, but these are the ones I wanted to talk about today. Fear is your biggest enemy. You only lose when you sell low, okay? So be careful. The market never goes down and stays down forever, although when it's down big, it feels like it's gonna be that way this time, right? 2008, when the mortgage bubble burst, they were talking about literally falling off the financial cliff, right? This could be the big one, right, is kind of what was being said. COVID, everybody stay home. Nobody go out and do anything. Nobody spend any money. Nobody do anything. All economic activity around the world globally, not just in a country, around the world dries up. The market, investors in the market say, wow, that's going to hurt profits. Right? That's going to definitely affect economic activity. Market drops 30% for COVID, recovers from that. So really, really important when we look at investor education, being the key to investor success, it's how to hold those events that come along in life. How to deal with them in a productive, rational way. Sometimes for clients, when they call me when something big is happening, we say, hey, let's both of us pull out the thesis again. Let's go review our principles again. Even I sometimes will need to do that because it looks bad sometimes. Honestly, it does. But we have recovered, the market specifically, has recovered from every bad thing that's ever happened. Great Depression, world wars, every conflict, every political event, everything. It has recovered from and gone on to set new highs. The only question is, how long is it down before it does that? All right? And do we have a portfolio designed in such a way that we can weather that period of time? So that's the philosophy that I use when I'm working with clients and managing portfolios. And the average, remember on the chart of the S&P 500 index, I showed 7.7% annual return. How do you get 7.7% annual return? The only way you get it is through time. Time is your friend. Short periods of time are your enemy. The market's been down 3 years in a row. I'm out. I'm doing something different. Putting my money in the money market fund or whatever. So I'm buying CDs. I can't handle it anymore. And then the next 3 years are the recovery, and you missed it. So it's really important that we allow time to do what it does, having consistent, disciplined approaches to our portfolio. Tolerance for market volatility should not change as the markets ebb and flow. It's so easy when the markets are up and they've been up for 2 or 3 years in a row to say, I'm a market believer. I'm going to put all my money in the market that's doing so well. Look at how well it's done. All these parts of my portfolio are so much higher, and I put all my money in, and then the next economic thing happens, the market pulls back, and you get out. So that's describing somebody whose risk tolerance changes with the market, and any accurate and fair and right assessment of somebody's tolerance for risk should evaluate all potential market scenarios and help guide us towards being able to tolerate those events when they happen. Okay, number 7 here. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the inpatient to the patient. It's quoted. Who said that? Warren Buffett said that. Warren Buffett said that, right? So the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient people over to the patient people. Okay, remember that. Number 8, have sufficient safe assets to get through any market decline and recovery scenario. We've talked about that. Number 9, thinking that you know what's going to happen next with the market is a fool's game. Even for the most sophisticated financial analysts and financial advisors, including myself, we don't really know what's going to happen. I know you don't want to hear that. You want to hear your financial advisor saying, I know exactly what's going to happen in 2024. I don't. I don't. I don't know what's going to happen. We have to have a strategy and a solution to be able to address whatever materializes. But here's a philosophy and a principle that I'm going to leave you with that I think is helpful. So if you ever believe that something is going to happen in the markets, in the economy, maybe leading to some investment decision that you're going to make based on it, never let yourself feel like you're more than 51% sure of that thing occurring, right? Don't ever think, I know what's going to happen 100% and I make these investment decisions and move things around and 51% sure. If you remind yourself of the 51% rule, you won't invest the whole thing. You won't do the whole shooting match, betting for or against whatever that thing is that you think is going to happen, right? So remember the 51% rule. Never let yourself feel like this is markets and investment decision making. Never feel like you're more than 51% correct on that thing happening. Number 10, maintain a commitment to staying the course. Using a well-defined strategy and plan, really important. Adopt a clear philosophy and perspective on supporting yourself and being a successful investor. And we talked about how to do that today. All right, so that is fear. I'm going to make a couple of comments here about healthcare costs. Obviously, it's a concern for retirees. We're talking about Medicaid primarily here. Everyone's eligible for Medicaid at age 65. I'm not going to get into a whole Medicaid conversation here. A couple things I want to point out. Medicaid is an 80-20 plan. Medicaid pays 80%. You are on the hook for 20%. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Medicare. Thank you. Medicare is an 80-20 plan. Medicare pays 80%. You pay 20% out of pocket. You can go to the private marketplace and purchase Medicare supplemental insurance to cover the 20%. To, in essence, make yourself pretty much 100% covered and protected for healthcare related expenses, okay? There are different levels of Medicare supplemental plans. I always advise clients to pick the best one. It's the most expensive, but it's got the most coverage. You just want to take medical expense off the table as something that could cause your portfolio to go from something significantly up to something significantly down. And if you buy your Medicare supplemental plan at a good coverage level, you're going to do that. Prescription drug plan is also something that you'll be choosing, and you may already have that today. What I always advise clients is to review your medications and your prescription drug plan annually. So you're allowed to change that plan during open enrollment. We're in open enrollment now. It runs through December 7th. And you can go to Medicare's website, medicare.gov. I think it's /plan-compare. You can go to their website. You can actually put in your medications at your prescription levels, and you can say, search the plans in my area and show me how much each one would cost. Every once in a while, you might have new medications or less medications that could lead you to benefiting more from another prescription drug plan. So it's always good to review that every year. All right? That's all I wanted to say about healthcare costs. Going to flip real quick here into long-term care. We had a long conversation with Max on this today. It's an important element in retirement planning for someone like myself. I'm not going to go over, I think Max did a good job of talking about what it is. I will agree and concur with Max that the traditional long-term care policies that were only available, that was the only product available for many years, have not turned out to be well. There have been price increases that have been significant. With those plans, you pay premiums your entire life. If you pass away and don't use the benefits, nothing comes back to your family, right? So they're on the outs in terms of popularity. There's not much you can do if you already have one other than pay the higher premium generally. The newer hybrid policies, just like Max, I really like. It does away with all of the problems with traditional long-term care insurance. You don't incur premium increases. There's never a chance to incur a premium increase. Once you're quoted what the premiums will be, that's the only amount that you'll ever pay into the policy. If you don't use that policy, that hybrid policy for long-term care, you pass away one day of something suddenly, it will pay a death benefit as life insurance, and at least the premiums that you put in will come back to your family. So you don't ever lose anything out of those policies. So that's really I think the key benefit and the driver to considering them. The other thing that can be used is life insurance. Before I talk about that, let me talk about self-insure here. So self-insure is basically just pay your own way. You might have considered long-term care insurance in whatever form, and concluded that you don't want it, in which case, if long-term care comes along, you're going to have to pay those costs out of pocket. All right? Now, long-term care can be very expensive. If you need a full-blown nursing home, it can be anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a month, depending on the care that you need. Assisted living can be anywhere from probably $6,000 to $8,000 a month. In-home care can still be expensive, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month for in-home caregivers to come in and provide that care. If you are choosing to self-insure, it's my recommendation that you do this consciously, that the decision that you made is just, I don't want long-term care insurance, but that you then take a portion of your portfolio, set it aside in a separate account, and call that my long-term care money, my long-term care self-insurance money. I'm not going to consider using it for anything else other than long-term care. If I don't need it for long-term care, it's going to be part of my estate. I'm passing it along. But to build your long-term care pool, your self-insurance pool, as opposed to, well, if it comes along, I'll just start taking withdrawals out of my portfolio. I don't want you to do that if it's going to potentially affect the other income and the other goals that it's achieving for you. I don't want you to commingle those funds. So that's generally a good practice for me. If you're going to self-insure and carve off some money, one of the things, strategy that Max didn't talk about that does get used sometimes is to purchase regular whole life insurance. It doesn't have any long-term care benefit while you're alive, but it can replenish or replace the money that's used from this pool of money that you set aside for long-term care should you need it. If you don't use that pool of money you've set aside, then the life insurance just adds additional tax-free wealth to your estate for your children and your family. All right, so that is long-term care. I wanted to just wrap up with a conversation around accidents and lawsuits. Okay, so scenario, bad car accident, and then let's talk about an aging person who's potentially more likely to have a bad car accident as our reaction times slow or our awareness of what's happening around us, particularly in much older age. But an accident happens, there's property damage, there are people who are seriously injured, potentially killed. When these scenarios unfold, the lawsuits that occur on this can be enormous. Having to calculate what somebody's value is for a lifetime that might have passed away. All those things get factored in. It can be millions of dollars in judgments and awards. And we do have our auto insurance policies, but they have limits of coverage. So you should be aware of what those limits of coverage, there's maximum amounts that those can pay out. But what you also have the ability to do is have umbrella liability insurance on top of your auto insurance and on top of your homeowner's insurance, which will give you an additional level of coverage should you reach those maximums. Okay? This is good insurance to have. I'll just make a couple points here on it. It does contain some coverages that your auto and home policies don't include, like liable, being sued for liable, those kind of things. It's a grossly underappreciated and undervalued type of insurance, and the good news is it's the cheapest insurance of any you can buy. For the amount of coverage that you get, it's very cheap. Most of these are $600-700 added to your homeowners or auto insurance policy, and you'd see your homeowners or auto insurance agent to get a quote on something that just, most of you are probably intelligent and already have this in place, but certainly worthwhile reviewing your coverage, making sure you know what you have. And then the last point here is remember to file a claim. Remember to include that as a consideration for any kind of significant financial accident that you might have. So, how am I doing on time, Jeff? Did we go a little over? Okay, all right. So I was going to open up for some questions, but I think I'll take just a couple of questions. This is really the end of my formal presentation. I will be available afterwards. I'll stay until the end if you want to approach me for some additional questions. And certainly I'm available for a consultation in my office if that's something you'd like to do. But a couple of questions. Anything here that we burning? Yes. But yeah, good question. Most people have their home and auto with the same company. When you buy an umbrella policy, it applies to both. So you don't need a separate one for auto and a separate one for home. What you will be deciding on your umbrella policy is how much you want. It could be $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of coverage, and that will drive the price for it. But it's generally all covered with your other auto and home. Yes, business liability is completely separate. Absolutely. Good questions. Thank you. Anything else? Yes. Yes. Yes, thank you, Steve. I do an entire presentation on Social Security optimizing benefits. If you're on my mailing list, you know when I do those, they're webinars these days since COVID. They've turned into webinars so you can watch from wherever you are. If you want to get on my mailing list, you can jump on my website and put your name on my list, and you'll get notified when I do that next. But thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. And thank you all very much for having me. I'm sorry, was there one question here? Sorry? Yeah. It's a really good question. There's really a dearth of financial education. We've taken it out of our curriculum in terms of our general education system. It's hard for people to get investment and finance education. A couple of things I'll recommend here. One is you could have them read the thesis that I make available. That could be helpful. I have had clients who've been longstanding good clients who want me to talk to their children, and I'll bring them into my conference room and have a one-on-one conversation with them. So I've done that on more than one occasion. But yeah, building good financial habits for young people is harder and harder to do today just because we don't teach much about it. But thank you for your question. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I was telling Mark the other day when I saw his presentation that a lot of the investment information in there was the same information my dad would type out and send out in letters to his clients 30 years ago. So good information never gets old. So thank you, Mark, for a really great presentation. Shrinkflation, my concern about that is those Klondike double chocolates have gotten a third smaller over the past 3 years. I'm so mad about that. It's just really concerning. Some things just bother me. Liz and Shannon, let's do a couple more door prizes, please.
Okay, we are going to do a few more. We're going to speed up the process a little bit here. So what we have here is a self-care gift box. Self-explanatory. Who doesn't need a little self-care? Thank you, Lisa. We have Margaret Pip. Margaret, there she is. You want to go give that to Margaret? Margaret, we'll keep it up here for you, all right? All right. And then we have the Baltimore Classical Guitar Society, 2 tickets for the show on February 24th at Linehan Hall in UMBC campus. That is Nancy Sebring. Nancy, we'll keep this up here for you, okay? And then, should we do the mystery basket? Okay, we have to confess, we have a mystery basket up here. This is our bonus basket. All kinds of goodies, candy, jam. It's a nice one, and the tin is nice too. So, how can you go wrong, right? Miranda Smith. Yeah, all right, Miranda, we'll hold it for you up here, okay? And then we'll do one more. This is tickets to the Handel Choir of Baltimore. You can go on their website and download the tickets for whenever you want to go to the show. All right. Who doesn't love Handel, right? Michael Abel. Where's Michael? Unro. Michael, we'll have these up here. Okay, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. I could talk about the next presenter for a long, long time, but I'm not going to right now. Andre, I could say a lot of great things about Andre for an hour. But Mr. Andre Lingham, our next speaker, is the founder and president for the Center of Elder Justice and Education. This nonprofit organization Andre founded in 2021 promotes elder abuse awareness and education, and its mission is fulfilled by virtual and in-person training for senior citizens, the general public, government agencies, police departments, and private institutions. Andre previously served over 30 years in law enforcement and retired from the Howard County Police Department in 2019 to focus full-time on elder abuse awareness and education. Andre has helped so many clients that have called into our office with really challenging issues about financial fraud and elder abuse, and I've, along with others, have referred them to Andre. I followed up with them several days later and asked how they are doing because of our concern, and they said, I'm doing great. Andre took care of it. It's just remarkable the work that Andre does, and his presentation is just critical, as you'll see in just a minute here. So we're very proud to call him a great friend to our firm, and personally, Andre is a friend to me. Joining him on stage is Ms. Karen Mossel, owner of Transforming Architecture. Karen is a family member of someone who fell victim to a scam, and will talk about the situation from her perspective and how it impacted her family, and we thank you both for being here.
Good morning. It's great to be here. I want to thank Jeff and Steve for inviting me. We've built up a great partnership over the past few years, so I look forward to doing more presentations and educating the public. So I got a lot of information to fit in, and we're going to try to get to all of it. So today I'm talking about elder financial exploitation, also known as the crime of the 21st century. So what is elder financial exploitation? It's basically the illegal taking, misuse, or concealment of an older person's funds, property, or assets. Some little known facts: seniors lose between $3 and $36 billion per year, and it's probably closer to $36 billion. It's really hard to actually get a number because a lot of seniors do not report that they've been victimized. So the most common form of abuse is financial abuse, seconded by physical abuse. And what we see in law enforcement is typically you'll have two different types of abuse. So you may see financial abuse and also physical abuse or emotional abuse. Seniors are often targeted for what's called re-victimization. So what happens is, say if you fall victim to, say, foreign lottery scam, you'll get a call about 6 months later from someone claiming to work for the federal government, that they can help you get your money back. And what they'll want is all your personal information: name, address, social security number, sometimes bank account information. And they'll tell you there's a small fee to help you get your money back. Again, once you give them all that information, you open yourself up to identity theft. Unfortunately, family members are the largest group of offenders. And that really shocked me when I first started educating myself on elder abuse. Unfortunately, you're more likely to be victimized by a family member than you are a stranger financially. So why are seniors targeted? Number one is wealth. It's estimated that seniors 70 and older control the majority of the wealth in this country. Also, cognitive impairments. There's a study that says as we get older, it's harder for us to pick out deceit. And then if you add in dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other type of cognitive impairment, you really open yourself up. They're mostly attached or dependent on others. I had a case several years ago where a senior was homebound and gave her credit card to a niece to pick up some stuff from the grocery store, medication, different things like that. Unfortunately, the niece decided to use the money used a credit card to book a vacation, use it for different odds and ends. It came to our attention because the senior went to the bank where she had the credit card issued from and wanted the charges reversed. They told her, well, you have to make a police report, and since you know who did it, and charge that person. She did not want to charge her niece, so she ended up paying back the $6,000 that her niece had ran up on her credit card. Also, reluctant to report exploitation by a family member. In the 5 years that I was senior liaison, I had maybe 2 cases where a senior actually came in and said a family member financially exploited them. Typically, it's an anonymous call, a friend, family member that would notify law enforcement or adult protective services that potentially a senior is being victimized. Advancing in technology has really made it difficult for seniors to manage finances. And typically what we would see is a couple that's been married 50 or 60 years, husband, say, passes away, he's always managed the finances. All of a sudden, the wife has millions of dollars or a sizable account that she needs to manage, and it's too much for her. So she'll easily turn it over to someone to manage. And I always say you really have to keep an eye on your finances. Even though someone else may be managing it, you still need to understand what's going out, coming in, what's being transferred. I had a senior that lost over $1 million based on that exact scenario. Suffer from isolation and loneliness. One of the biggest things we saw during COVID was isolation, and we all were pretty much isolated. You couldn't visit, senior centers. You couldn't visit hospitals, nursing homes, different things like that, which opened up seniors to being victimized. Easily intimidated. I have a video here where a senior had fallen victim to a lottery scam, and after several months, she figured out that she was being scammed and stopped sending the scammers money. So they actually left a threatening message on her answering machine. So here it is. What was the last thing he said? Do you want me to come over there and set your home on fire? What they'll do is go on Google Earth and pull up a picture of whatever residence that the senior lives at, and we'll pick out something specific to that house. In this case, they could call back and say, hey, we were just by your house, and I know you have a porch that runs the full length of your house, and your garage, your 2-car garage is on the left side. Or they'll just pick out something specific to that residence. The senior will truly believe that they were actually at their house, when in reality they're in Russia or Jamaica or China or wherever they're running the scam from. So red flags and warning signs. This is probably the biggest one you'll see is unusual activity on bank accounts, including large, frequent, and unexplained withdrawals. Sudden failure to pay bills. You'll have a senior that's had a nice savings. Now all of a sudden they can't pay their bills because they're giving all their money away to the scammers. When you see family member financial exploitation, altered wills or trusts at the last minute. I had one case where a senior had 5 power of attorneys. Each child had a power of attorney over the senior. And Steve can tell you, you can't manage that. But what would happen is they would intimidate mom, say, no, I want to control the finances, and she would sign a power of attorney, and it ended up being a total of 5 power of attorneys. Isolation from family and friends. A lot of times you'll see caregiver situations where mom or dad moves in, and then all of a sudden the caregiver isolates mom or dad from the rest of the family. Or it can be personal isolation where they just don't want to be bothered with anyone, but they will take the call from the scammer. Another one, new best friends and long-lost relatives. the niece that's, mid-30s that's kind of floated from California to Texas to New York, and then all of a sudden makes her way here and, connects with an aunt and says, oh, don't worry about anything. I'll take care of the finances. You're getting older. You don't need to worry about this. I had one case that happened in a church in Howard County where a senior signed her house over to a church member, and the family had no idea until the senior passed away. She had her sign a quitclaim deed, had no idea. The family lost over $400,000 related to that. Mood changes, and what you'll find is now all of a sudden I can't pay my bills, I can't pay my car note, can't purchase my medication. You're in your 70s and 80s, you can't go out and get a second job like a person in their 20s and 30s trying to supplement their income. So today we're going to pretty much stick with stranger financial exploitation. This could be the salesman door to door, the con artist calling on the phone, contractors going door to door. Anyone familiar with the green dot card? So a green dot card is a prepaid money card, and typically what the scammers will want you to do is put money on the green dot card, and then they will want the number on the back of it, and so they can transfer the money from the card to whatever account they want it to go to. So if you're visiting friends or someone and you see a pile of these cards, and you know that they typically have a credit card, debit card, just ask them, hey, what is that card for? I can guarantee you they're probably being scammed. Other ways that they'll want you to send money is money transfer, MoneyGram, Western Union, different money wiring companies like that. Every time I go to Walmart or I'm in the grocery store and I see an older person wiring money, I want to go up sometimes and ask them, hey, why are you sending money? Well, where are you sending money to? Because really, it's no reason for you in your 70s, 80s, and 90s to be wiring money out of the country. Western Union. So Western Union is the biggest money transfer company in the world. They paid a $586 million fine because they looked away from all these scams happening. So if they paid $586 million, can you imagine how much money they actually made by all the money being transferred? This is the number one probably advice I give to people. Anyone calling you on the phone, do not give any personal information. If they're calling to confirm, your name, address, whatever, just hang up the phone. Sometimes it may be legitimate. If they say, yeah, I'm calling from USAA, I just need to confirm some information, say, well, personally, I don't give out any information over the phone. I will call you back from the legitimate number from where they say they're calling. Because what they'll do is say, hey, well, you can call me directly back at this number. And all you're doing is calling the scammer back, basically, on his cell phone. Two of the biggest scams are Social Security and Medicare scams. And they'll call and want you to verify your Social Security number and also your Medicare number. For your Medicare number, they'll use that for medical ID theft. And I talked with someone earlier that was just a victim of medical ID theft, unfortunately. So again, do not give out any information over the phone. So the first one we're going to talk about is a family member scam, also known as a grandparent scam. And typically they'll call you and claim to be a grandson, granddaughter, niece, nephew, something tragic has happened, and you need to send money right away. This scam happens all the time, unfortunately. It happened to my mom when she lived with me. Someone called and said that I was in an accident and that she needed to send them money. Luckily, I'd educated her, and she basically hung up the phone and then called me, said, hey, I just got this call. You definitely want to do that. Whoever they're claiming to be, you call them, because they may be also calling other family members. Here's a video I'll show of a senior in New York that had fallen victim to this.
Surveillance video shows a man slowly approaching an 81-year-old woman's home, lurking and looking around. Moments later, with a nonchalant grin, police say he simply takes her life savings because she thinks it's necessary to help her son. You even hear the victim apologizing for the feel of the freshly withdrawn cash.
Let me tell you, they're very slippery. Okay, very careful. You want to sign the show? Okay. Thank you. You too.
She even seems to be grateful as she hands over $45,000 in total. Investigators say the thief claimed her son needed bail money after hitting a pregnant woman's car, injuring her and killing her unborn child.
That's about as brazen as you're going to get. That's why I have no, this is disgusting to me. This individual preyed on this woman because she's 81 years old.
Nassau County Police tells the scammer first called the victim around 11 a.m. Monday, asking for $7,500. When she went to the bank and withdrew that, he called a few hours later and asked her for $7,500 more. Then later that evening, a third time, going for $30,000.
This piece of garbage came back. She gave it to him the first time. That wasn't enough. He came back a second time, and then he tripled down on the amount of money, going for $30,000.
I love that press conference. He really laid it out. Folks, that can happen. It really hits home when you see a senior give away cash to someone showing up at their door. Don't think it can't happen, because it can. Another scam that we see quite a bit in this area is called the jury duty scam. They'll call you typically on a Friday and tell you that you missed jury duty and there's an arrest warrant for you. And if you don't pay X amount of dollars, you're going to go to jail. And they do it specifically on Friday because they'll say, well, if you don't pay us now, you may get arrested and end up in jail over the weekend. So what happens also is you will see a local, for Howard County government, is 313 number. So they'll use a real deputy's name, the real sheriff's department number, but they'll want you to call them back on a different number. Sweepstakes and lottery scams. Typically what they'll do is send letters out like this saying you won X amount of dollars or you won different prizes, but you have to either pay the taxes or pay a small fee. A lot of times they're nice, and well, they'll send you a letter and also a check to cover the taxes. But what they'll want you to do is deposit the check and then send them a check back for that exact same amount. So after you deposit it, and of course it's going to bounce, you've already sent your check back to them. Now what do they have? Name, address, and all your bank account information. Here's a video of a family that parents had fallen victim to the scam. Hold your ears. For some reason, it comes on pretty loud. And then we'll do a case study after this.
Donna Parker can't help but feel guilty.
I felt stupid. I mean, it's like, I should have known. I should have looked. I should have paid attention. But I didn't.
By the time she figured out what was happening, her elderly parents were hundreds of thousands in debt.
And I just spent all this time going, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
By phone and mail, a ring of Canadian sweepstakes scammers had tricked Charles and Miriam Parker into giving away their life savings. And before it was over, the highly educated couple had become unwitting accomplices in what officials say is a $3 billion a year racket.
I've been on house calls with older adults where there have been concerns about abuse or neglect, and literally not 60 seconds would go by that phone wasn't ringing. And I would pick up the phone and say hello, and it was, a Nigerian princess or somebody in the Canadian lottery.
FBI agent Joan Fleming handled the Parker case and says the problem is getting worse every year.
I'm seeing larger amounts of money from single victims reported. 6 figures is not unusual.
But what makes the Parker case unusual is that after they'd been cleaned out, the couple became what authorities call money mules. The scammers would have other elderly victims send cash to the Parkers, hidden in old magazines. Mrs. Parker would then repackage it and forward it to Montreal.
Having the money hopscotch from one victim to another makes it much more complicated.
The Parkers' troubles began sometime in late 2004.
I knew my dad had a good retirement. I knew for years they'd been able, after he retired, been able to live within their means. Then all of a sudden, they couldn't.
Like many victims, her parents hadn't been diagnosed with dementia or any other mental deficiency.
Even in the really early stages before you have Alzheimer's, like mild cognitive impairment, you become more vulnerable to getting scammed.
Everybody said to me, it's their money. It's their money.
After nearly 4 years of struggle, the Parker children sued to have their parents declared financially incompetent.
You know how hard that is to take your parents to court? The one thing my dad kept saying was, I am not mentally incompetent. I am not mentally incompetent.
Remember some of the red flags that I talked about earlier, where they had a nice, comfortable living, then all of a sudden they couldn't pay their bills? This is a case that I worked on several years ago. My victim was 83 years old, lived in Ellicott City, received a call that she had won millions of dollars in a BMW, but she had to pay $12,000 in taxes. So she went to her local bank. Luckily, the teller saw that amount of money that she was trying to withdraw and told her, hey, you have to talk to the bank manager before we release that amount of funds. So she spoke with the manager, actually told him, yes, I won the lottery, I just have to pay the taxes. Of course, he said, ma'am, this is a scam, you don't want to do this. No, 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 I know, I've vetted these people, they're good Christian people. And they'll throw that out there also. So he called the Howard County Police. Officer went up, talked to her. I don't need your help. I just want my money, and leave. Luckily, the officer called me. I went and met with her several hours later. She told me that she had actually sent the money, wouldn't tell me where it was going, but she had said she had sent it FedEx. So she packaged $12,000 in a FedEx package. So I went to the closest FedEx location, and I actually found the letter, found the package. So I had a decision to make. Do I let it go through, or do I seize it, but I got to give it back to her, and what is she going to do? Exactly. So I decided to let it go through because it was going to a small town in Kentucky, Covington, Kentucky. So I contacted a detective in their fraud unit down there and said, hey, you know, I got this package coming through, gave him the name and address of where it was going. So they said, oh, yeah, we know this guy. We've talked to him before about this. He was initially a victim and then turned into the money mule. So he would get the money, take 10%, and forward it to wherever they wanted him to forward the money to. So this is Mr. Grout, where the money was going. This time they charged him, and he was sentenced to 5 years in the Kentucky State Penitentiary. Can you imagine going to jail in your late 70s for 5 years in a penitentiary? He did probably 4.5 out of the 5 years, but again, he was a victim and turned into a money mule. I can probably put up 10, 15 different pictures of seniors that turned into money mules where they've been charged. IRS tax scam, this is a big one. If you get a call from someone from the IRS that you owe back taxes, just ignore it and hang up the phone. Typically, they'll send you a letter. It's interesting with this scam, what they'll want is for you to pay the money using iTunes gift cards. Now why? With the IRS wants you to put money on iTunes gift cards. Makes no sense, but I've had several victims that it happened to. So we're going to finish up with this one, the online romance scam, also looking for love in all the wrong places. So typically with this scam is a person will put their profile on a dating site, Facebook, social media, then all of a sudden they'll be contacted by someone. Hey, I saw your profile, you know, the typical, I'd like to get to know you, you're beautiful, you know, all that good stuff. They will groom you over a period of time. I've seen grooming up to a year. I've seen it as low as several weeks. They'll fill you out, and then eventually it all boils down to a tragedy happens, and they want you to send them money. So now they've even, you know, tweaked this scam a little bit and use cryptocurrency romance scam. So it's the same MO as a regular romance scam, but they'll say, hey, I work in the crypto field. You ever think about investing in crypto? No, I'm not really familiar with it. I'm not up on it. Well, you can really make a lot of money quick. Look, just send me $500. We'll see what happens. So you'll send them $500, and they'll set up a fake website where you can go on and watch your money just double and triple. And then they'll say, hey, do you want to cash out? What would we typically say? Heck no, I want more money, so I'm going to send them more. So it's called pig butchering. And they'll set you up making sure the account is fat, and then eventually you'll go on your account and you won't be able to go on the website, and your money is gone. But it's really elaborate because you can go on and look at your fake account. Just like Bernie Madoff, he was sending out statements every month or whatever with the value of your accounts, typically the same way with this scam. This was a deputy United States Marshal out of D.C. that was charged with running this online romance scam. This was last year. $1.9 million he made, and involved more than 20 victims. He said he was deployed in the armed forces, that he was a major general, and someone sent him over $300,000. Now, why would a major general in the military need $300,000? So this is a case that I worked on in Howard County. My victim was a 67-year-old retired doctor, early onset of dementia, had her profile on Facebook. A person contacted her, said he was working in the Gulf of Mexico on an oil rig. What they will do also is want you to go to a separate communication site, which is hard for law enforcement to track. So in this case, it's called VIPE, V-I-P-E, and it's really hard to get any tangible information from VIPE when you're doing an investigation. So these are some of the amounts that she sent over a 1-month period. $76,000, $56,000, $56,000, $55,000, $250,000, $50,000, and $50,000. So I want to invite Karen up to speak. Karen, this was her mom that it happened to. So I really wanted to invite her out to speak on from the family point of view and how it affected the family and a little bit about her mom. So here's Karen.
Hello. So my mom is one of the smartest people I know. Just give you a little background. She got married right out of high school because she had a 4-year-old brother at home and figured if she got married and had a couple kids, then she would get away from that. So she had me and my sister. My father was in the military. He was in the Army. He was a helicopter pilot. A couple years later, he cheated on her, so she packed us all in a car. We lived in California at the time, packed us in the car, and moved back home to Michigan. We were on welfare. She put herself through medical school with 2 babies. So I was on welfare until I was probably in 6th grade. Government housing, the big brick buildings. And then she bought our first house, and, going through school, did her residency in upstate New York. So that's where I went to high school. Great life. She got married to my stepfather and was married for 16 years. They got divorced, and so she lived by herself for a long time, and she moved to Delaware. So I'm here in Maryland. She's in Delaware. We, visited all the time, talked to her on the phone every day. She was lonely, and she started to have a little trouble understanding. I got a couple calls from the state police, like, hey, your mom keeps calling us because she thinks somebody's in her house. Started to get a little paranoid, so we moved her to our house. We built this great suite for her, moved her to our house. Again, she's still lonely, even though she's got her grandkids there. She started talking about Michael. Michael is this guy. Not a real guy, but she started talking about Michael. Yeah, we talked on the phone today for the first time, and it went on for probably 6 or 8 months. And then I got a call from the bank that said, your mom's been transferring a lot of money. We made her go to the police. And that's when I met this gentleman. So she had transferred all of this money, unbeknownst to all of us. She was a doctor. She was an anesthesiologist. Like I said, one of the smartest people I know. She was lonely. And Michael said all the right things to her. Come to find out, Michael's probably in Russia. But he gave a great sob story, and my mom is a loving person, so she wanted to help. And so the stories kept getting more and more elaborate. The very last time that Michael asked for money, my mom tried to transfer $500,000 to him. And thankfully, at that point in time, I had a power of attorney, and her financial advisor called me when I was in Ocean City and said, hey, your mom's trying to do this again. And I said, the answer's no, I have a power of attorney now. And I think my mom knew a little bit in the back of her head, but she loved this man. She talked about him all the time, and they were gonna get married and they were gonna have a life together. And it's really sad that someone can take advantage of people, of a person. She had early onset Alzheimer's. She's now at Arbor Terrace in Fulton, and thankfully she didn't spend all of her money on him because she needs the care, because she doesn't remember who her kids are now. But she just wanted love. She just wanted someone to make her feel special, and he did. So, pluses and minuses, not sure it's really worth all that, but if you think it can't happen to you, it can, because we all want to feel special, and we all want great things in life. So, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I appreciate that. So we're going to wrap it up now. So there's a couple things that you can do to minimize being victimized yourself and also your loved ones. The main thing is educate yourself about how to recognize and report elder abuse. That's why I really love doing these presentations, because if it can save one person, it was all worth it. Second is educate and re-educate older adults on elder abuse. If you have parents that's getting older, you've educated them. Every so often, you need to re-educate them and really stress, do not, number one, give out any information on the phone. Number two, do not send anyone any money. There's several companies out there now that offer monitoring, that will monitor your bank accounts and different accounts that you have. So that's one thing you could look at doing also, and it's actually pretty inexpensive. Once you suspect elder abuse, report it to APS, Ombudsman, and your local police department. Also, frequently check on older adults that have few friends, or neighbors that live by themselves that are getting older. I have a neighbor several doors down that unfortunately sent $6,000 because she got a call that she was behind on her property tax, and she sent them $6,000. And each one of you educate one. Whatever you learned today, just reach out to someone who wasn't here and say, hey, I saw this nice, handsome guy, and I learned all this good stuff. And by all means, if you'd like me to come out and do a presentation to your church for community group or whatever, my card's out there. Feel free to give me a call. I would love to do it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Any brief questions for Andre? Not letting you get away, Andre. Yes, in the back there.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yeah, if you were.
Same way with my mom. I would have to literally empty the mailbox every day for all these different, again, charities, different magazines with all these different products, because she would buy all this stuff. And once they get your information, they just flood you over and over and over.
One more question. Yes, ma'am.
So it's mostly done digitally now. Unfortunately, there's been a big increase in what's called check washing, where they'll get your check and basically change the amounts and, payable to and all that. So at this point, I'm more partial to paying electronically. That way you have a receipt on both ends. But you also need to match up the withdrawals from your account to make sure everything is above board and it's the exact amount that you transferred. And again, if you are writing checks, just be mindful that is huge now. It's check washing. It's gone up about 130% over the past year.
Okay, thank you. Andre is always available for presentations. If you or somebody you know would like to listen, organization, somebody would like to listen to what Andre has to share, so important. We'll do the charity drawing briefly, then we have Gary's legislative update, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Pick a ticket.
We're a little bit behind, but good things take time sometimes, right?
Okay, these are for the two big baskets in the back. Thank you, everybody who bought a ticket. Ticket number 866-8229. Yay!
Congratulations.
Karen Flynn, right? Okay.
Okay.
Right there.
Our final presenter is the law offices of Gary Greenwald's principal, Gary Greenwald. Gary's been practicing law in Maryland for more than 40 years. His practice consists primarily of estate planning, wills, trusts, trust settlement, probate, and business law. Mr. Greenwald is currently an active member of the Columbia Town Center Rotary International and has recently been honored as a Paul Harris Fellow. He serves on the Rotary's Board of Directors, and has been elected twice as its president. Gary was selected to the Maryland Super Lawyers list for the last 3 years in the field of estate planning. Along with Elwin Associates, the law offices of Gary Greenwald is one of only a handful of firms around the nation with a client care program accredited by the Client Care Academy in Boston. So Gary, I will turn it over to you to finish us off.
Well, thank you, Jeff. But I have a favor to ask of you. Next time we do this, please don't have me follow Andre and Karen. So there have been some changes to the Maryland laws this past year. The first one is that now, guess what? You can toke up. Back in November of last year, there was a referendum regarding whether or not Maryland citizens would like to have marijuana and cannabis legalized. So we now have a new law which says that in Maryland you can actually have limited amounts of cannabis and smoke it if you like. In fact, under the new Maryland law, cannabis is considered a tobacco product. But be careful, please, because under this law, employers may still test you for marijuana. In fact, they can still enforce their procedures regarding drug testing. The law does not protect you under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Business owners ought to take a look at their employment manuals, their employment contracts, to make sure that these documents are consistent with the new law. So you can toke up, but you need to do it at home. Don't do it at work. You could lose your job. Next, you've probably heard of non-compete provisions. A non-compete provision is one by which if you work for an employer, you may be asked to, if you terminate employment, not work in a competing business within a certain period of time. But under Maryland law, if you make $15 an hour or less, you are not required to sign a non-compete agreement if you are asked. The law changed as of October 1, 2023. Now, if you work for an employer that has 15 people working for them or more, the per hour threshold where you cannot be required to sign a non-compete is 150% of the state minimum wage. Currently, the state minimum wage is $13.25 per hour for a large employer and $12.80 for a small employer. So if you're asked to sign a non-compete and you work for a large employer and you're making that hourly rate or less, you do not have to sign a non-compete agreement. On January 1, this amount's going to go up to $22.50 per hour, or $46,800 annually. The next change in the law is Maryland passed the Gender Affirming Treatment Act. Under this law, under Maryland Medicaid, we expand coverage for gender affirming care. This includes revisions or reversals of prior treatments. It includes procedures related to hair alteration, voice modification surgery and therapy, and alterations to the neck, face, abdomen, and trunk. Also, it is related to fertility preservation services. So if you're on Medicaid, the treatment for gender affirming care has been expanded. Maryland passed the Behavioral Health Care Act. Under this law, a Commission on Behavioral Health Care Treatment and Access has been established. It is the job of this commission to make recommendations regarding health care services available to Maryland residents. The passing of the Maryland Abortion Rights Law has taken place. Under current law now, public universities and colleges in Maryland are required to have procedures so that students can receive care near the campus related to emergency contraception, birth control, and abortion pills. Now, pursuant to the most recent ballot initiative, a Maryland constitutional right is going to be on the ballot in November 2024. There will be a ballot that you can sign as to whether or not you are in favor of amending the Maryland Constitution to guarantee the right of abortion in Maryland. Under current law, you cannot be prosecuted criminally, you cannot be sued, or you cannot be subject to administrative penalties if you receive abortion care treatment in other states. And finally, the new law protects your records from being disseminated electronically to other states. Under the new law now, and this really only applies to, I guess, attorneys and people who may be probating estates on their own without the aid of an attorney, now under Maryland law, the Register of Wills can accept electronic signatures and filings for document submissions. I think Steve mentioned this earlier, but there was a very comprehensive change to the laws about powers of attorney in Maryland. And for those of you who are members of either Steve's client care program or mine, the next time we review your documents and your estate plan, we want to go over this new law regarding powers of attorney. It has become much more expansive. An agent in a power of attorney, in other words, if you've signed a power of attorney appointing someone as your agent, now under Maryland law, the agent may appoint his or her successor. An agent may now be compensated for what he or she does. An agent may now take action regarding your household items, your tangible property. Because of, I guess, a glitch in the Maryland law, under the current Maryland power of attorney, tangible property is not subject to a power of attorney. An agent may now perform acts needed to qualify for certain government benefits. An agent may now take actions relating to trust and estate matters. I think Steve mentioned earlier that there are going to be new laws regarding the federal estate tax system. The agent may now, on your behalf, take action to protect you from any such changes. Here's one you may want to be careful about. An agent may now make gifts on your behalf. You may not want that. An agent may now open joint accounts for you. An agent may now change rights of survivorship. If you own property jointly with somebody else, an agent can change your rights regarding those properties. An agent may now make a qualified disclaimer for you. A disclaimer is a device by which, if it turns out you need some estate tax protection, often estate tax reducing trusts are funded as a result of a disclaimer by a surviving spouse. An agent may now do that for you. Under the law, each of us has a $5 million estate tax exemption under Maryland law. Currently, the federal estate tax exemption is a little bit less than $13 million a person, and a little less than $26 million per couple. In Maryland, again, it's $5 million per person, $10 million per couple. Now, you have the ability, if an estate tax return is filed, if you're the surviving spouse, to make an election which allows you to use the unused portion of your deceased spouse's exemption. Under Maryland law, you can make an election to use the unused portion of your deceased spouse. This new law now allows you up to 5 years from the date of death of your spouse to make that election. A very comprehensive new law has been passed under the Maryland legislature regarding domestic partnerships. This law expands the benefits to domestic partners. You do not have to be both male, you do not have to be both female, you can be a male and a female or any other combination, but you can enter into a domestic partnership agreement which affords you rights now under the current law, under the new law, almost the same as if you were actually married. Under this new law, a domestic partner, as long as it is registered, is entitled to the same rights of a surviving spouse in the event that you died intestate. An intestate estate is one where you die without an estate plan. The same rights that you would have if you were married now are given to you if you're a surviving domestic partner. For instance, if all the children of the deceased spouse are adults, then the surviving spouse now receives the entire estate instead of just a part of it. If you're a registered domestic partner, you get the same rights. If the person who died has adult children from another relationship, the survivor now gets the first $100,000 plus the balance of the estate of the deceased spouse. Now, if you're a domestic partner and the partnership agreement is registered, you have the same rights. Next, a surviving spouse has certain rights as far as priority to become an executor or a personal representative of an estate. If you are a domestic partner and your partnership agreement has been registered, you have that same right of priority. And under Maryland law, if you recall when you came to Steve's firm or to mine, there is something in Maryland called an inheritance tax. It is different than an estate tax. The estate tax assesses an estate tax on an estate which is worth more than $5 million. If you're single, $10 million possibly if you're married. But the inheritance tax is a 10% across-the-board tax for any beneficiary who is not a surviving spouse, who is not a descendant, who is not a parent, and who is not a sibling. It used to be, up until the law was passed, that if you're a surviving domestic partner, you are subject to the 10% tax. Now you are no longer subject to the tax, but again, the domestic partnership agreement must be registered. Finally, Maryland passed a decanting act. There's something called decanting a trust. Let's assume a trust was prepared, the circumstances have now changed, perhaps the circumstances revolving around the beneficiaries have changed, or the laws about trusts have changed. When you decant a trust, you can create a new trust, transfer the assets from the old trust into the new trust, as long as the beneficiaries and as long as the terms are basically the same or substantially similar. Now under Maryland law, you can decant a trust. So if you have an irrevocable trust that was done years ago and the circumstances surrounding the inception of the trust have changed, you can now change the trust. You can actually put it into another trust through this process called decanting. Now, before I thank you and before Steve and Jeff comes up here with their final comments, I usually try and find an interesting case to talk about. And so there is a case that took place in the last year in Maryland, is the case about Andrea Jacobson. So let me tell you about Andrea Jacobson, and let me see if you all can guess what the Maryland Supreme Court did. Andrea had a daughter. Andrea's daughter was named Amy. Andrea did not like Amy. Amy did not like Andrea. Andrea had a sister. Andrea's sister's name was Lisa. Andrea really liked Lisa. Lisa really liked Andrea. Andrea had a will and a trust that designated Amy as her sole beneficiary. Andrea also had a power of attorney that designated designated Amy as her agent. At some point, Andrea had had enough. So what she did was she amended her will, she amended her trust, totally disinheriting Amy, terminating Amy as her agent, and appointed Lisa. Well, this didn't make Amy happy. So Amy filed a lawsuit. She challenged the will, she challenged the trust, she challenged the new power of attorney on the basis that her mother was a victim of fraud, a victim of undue influence, and she was incompetent. She didn't really know what she was signing. So, case went to trial. I will tell you that the Supreme Court in Maryland approved it, basically affirmed the trial court decision. How do you think the court ruled? Anybody want to take a guess? All right, well, I know it's late, so I'm going to deflate all the suspense until, oh. They ruled for Amy. Why do you think they ruled for Amy?
Because that's just the way these things go.
Well, luckily for Lisa, and luckily for Andrea, it didn't go that way at all. Here's what the court said. Now, you remember when you spoke to Steve or to me, and you're coming in and you're talking about wills and trusts, what did we tell you about the effectiveness of the will? It takes effect only when you die, right? And in a trust, if you're leaving assets to a child or to somebody else, that part of the trust only takes effect upon your death. What the court said was, wait a minute. While your mom is still alive, you have no rights to anything because the will and the trust can always be changed. So you have nothing more than a potential possible right to something if it turns out these documents are set aside. So while mom is alive, guess what? The daughter cannot challenge the will, cannot challenge the trust. Now, what about the power of attorney? What do you think the court said there? All right, I will tell you. The court denied her claim to set aside the power of attorney. Number one, there was no proof that she could actually give to the court upon which they could rely to say that she didn't know what she was signing. But also, and here's the key in my opinion, the court said she could not prove that Lisa had done anything wrong. Lisa never misused her authority. So where is the damage? Where is the harm? Bottom line, if you are a child in this room and you don't like when mom and dad did with their will or trust, treat them nicely, because you can't put it aside. Thank you.
Okay, this concludes our program. Before we go, I'd like to thank some people who made this event possible briefly. First to Steve Elville and Gary Greenwald, leaders of our respective firms. Thank you for all you do each day and for making events like this possible. Next, a thank you to our vendors, Ten Oaks Ballroom for hosting, putting on the Ritz Caterers and its staff for their food and attention today, and King Audio Visual over here in the corner. Thank you so much. Also, the attorneys and staff at Elville & Associates and the law offices of Gary Greenwald for all that you do each day. And also to our guest presenters, Max, Mark, Evan, Andre, and Karen. Thank you so much. Very high level. And a huge thank you to our client event committee over the past 8 months, Elville & Associates attorney Renee Boyd, staff members Jane Rossheim, Liz Walsh, Vonda DeBard, Sarah Von Stein, Grace Bailey, and Jasmine Braxton. Without you, none of this would have been possible. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun 8 months. A lot of hard work. We also had some fun along the way. And lastly, a thank you to you, our clients, financial advisors, and interested community members for being here today. Without you, None of this would have been possible. We hope you enjoyed yourselves and learned a lot, and we hope to see you in our offices and at our next event next year, to be determined. So, have a great weekend and happy holidays. It's
And
not
Jeff,
too early
we
to say
have-
that. We'll see you soon.
And we
you.
thank you, and we thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. And we have 3 more prizes.
We have 3 more prizes to give away, so hold your fire there. Okay. We have, oh, I got it. Yeah. I got to put my glasses on. Hang on. I broke my glasses. Oh, the basket is the McCutcheon's Pantry. Who knows about McCutcheon's in Maryland? I guess a lot of people do. Bridget Wesley. Bridget, oh, there's Bridget. Will hold it for you up here, okay? Can you put that right there? Then we have a coffee lover's gift basket. Works for me. Alice Wilkins. Where's Alice? Well, Alice, if you're here, we'll hold it over here. And then we have the, last but not least, the de-stress collection, which, who needs that, right? Richard Motley. Richard, are you in the room? All right, that's it for our guest. Yep. And these are left over.